I understand this is an open meeting and all the candidates are free to be in here by virtue of law. On the other hand, it seems to me, the candidates agree, it's not quite fair for the last guy to hear the pitch of the previous four guys. Mr. Passenger, how is it typically done?
What I would say to the candidates is you're welcome to be here. Florida law, it's an open meeting. However, if the candidate in front of you gives a really good answer to a question, you won't be able to use it. So it might behoove you to not be in the room when the candidates are, the other candidates are interviewing. And sometimes it makes the council a little uncomfortable.
It's not a matter of uncomfortableness. It's just kind of like, the first guy's open and cold and the last guy gets to hear the other three guys' pitches. And, he can adjust to that.
Right.
And I'm not even looking at names here. I'm just looking at the process in general, which is why I bring the subject up.
I guess we can ask if the other candidates who are later on in the process, are they okay leaving?
We've already discussed it. We're going to step out. We only stepped in because you said you were discussing the process.
Okay.
We're going to step back out when Mr. Collier goes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Problem solved.
And in terms of questions, you can ask ones you haven't asked. You could perhaps one of the candidates gave you a really good answer to a question. You may want to ask that again so that your colleagues can hear the answer. Or if they bombed on a question, you may want to ask that question so your colleagues can hear it. With that, I'd just turn it over to you and let you go.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, second part. This is for this council. Are you opening it to the public?
So at the very end of you said, I guess before the break, right?
Well, the appropriate time would be before the open session on the discussion, your discussion after the interviews. When that part of the process starts, that is now something that there's a right for public comment per the law. So I think what the plan was, I think there's a break after the interviews are over. When we come back from break, the first thing will be public comment. Not public question or public conversation,
Okay.
but public comment.
Yeah. So we'll interview all. We'll have a break. Come back in.
Pertaining to the interviews.
Yeah, yes, just about what we're here for today.
Yep.
So,
Comment, and we'll-
we're not answering questions,
No.
or the candidates are not answering questions from the,
Public
Public.
comment is public comment,
Okay.
not public conversation or public question.
okay.
And then-
Sometimes I know it modifies as the night goes on or the day
Yes.
goes on, but truly public comment is to give them a moment to comment
Yeah.
on what we're
and still within the 3-minute
3 minutes.
parameter.
Yep, all the same rules would apply.
And one other thing is that normally when a candidate's done with his or her interview, I just let them go. They don't need to stick around for the decision. The reason being, I've kind of scheduled the candidates so that if they have an afternoon or evening flight back to their hometown, that town won't have to pick up another night's lodging.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Fair.
Okay.
Anything else? We'll mention that you said 2 to 3 minutes kind of opener or whatever. Mr. Russo, I think he asked everybody. I think he has a 5-minute thing for it. I don't have a problem with 5 minutes. So I just go with 5 minutes. If you don't use it, whatever you have, I'll give you
I
5
say we
minutes.
extend it up to 5 minutes for all of them if they want to do it.
Yeah.
And, have their opening statements and then we go from there.
Good.
It's really your call.
Yep. So we'll open it with 5-minute opener. Like I say, you don't have to use it all the time or whatever, and then we'll take questions after.
And if you go a little over, we're not going to close you off
Exactly.
either.
Just kind of give you a time frame. Very good. With that, you guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you. So our first candidate, I'd like to welcome Mr. Matthew Koppler. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good seeing you again. Appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed the morning session and last night as well, meeting with some of the residents and hearing what's going on.
Is that microphone?
Yep.
Is that better?
I'm not sure. I can hear you fine up here, but for the audience.
Oh.
Yes, you're good.
I can hear myself too, so.
You have thumbs up, I think.
Good?
Yeah.
I can shout if you want me to. But again, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Found the community very nice, and I think it's a wonderful place, not only to raise a family, but to have some fun as well, because there's a lot of opportunities. But a little bit about me. 30 years as a city and town manager in a number of the northern states, Ohio, New York, Connecticut, Michigan most recently. All sizes of communities, from down to around 5,000 population up to 60,000 employees, from 40 odd employees all the way up to over 500. I've had a lot of experience in different communities, and I know that one question always comes up about why would you want to go to a small community if you've been in these large communities. And it's part of, I think, of the search that I started last year when I stepped away from being a manager, and to find where I really fit in the world of management. I knew I didn't want to leave, but I wanted to have a different role. I wanted to be where I could be more hands-on, more interactive with the staff, with the elected officials, as well as the residents. And that's kind of what brought me to this community, and looking at the opportunities and the challenges that you're going to face over the next 10 years. I think they're things that provide a lot of interest to me. And I've been through a number of those different issues, whether it's the infrastructure, building staff capacity, or engaging the residents in the vision that the mayor and council has for this community. And that's one of my beliefs, core beliefs, which is to try to get people together to talk about how do we create a better community. And I think that's what I can bring to the table here in Port Richey. And I'm not going to use my full 5 minutes.
Well, floor questions.
Well, I'll jump in. The question I have, which I'm also going to propose to all the candidates. So my question to you would be, and again, this council here, you report to us. What is your expectation of this council if you are so chosen? What is your expectation of us? I do want to share that historically in the past, there's been elected officials that chose to have a more active role, circumventing the city manager, going directly to department heads and addressing concerns there. And then the second part of it is what guidance are you going to give your staff if that happens, where a council member approaches a department head for a specific item? What guidance are you going to give that department head?
So I think a couple philosophical things for me first. I think there is absolute value in council members talking to the employees in some capacity, because I think it's important for you to get a firsthand understanding of what they're going through, what they're seeing, what their needs are. I think it's important for staff at times to talk to council, because you help, build the vision of what we're trying to achieve as an organization. And so that communication is very important. Now, I think to the heart of your question, though, is there's this in between where you really want to get something done, and out of the goodness of your heart, you think it's better to go directly to an employee. And sometimes I might agree that may be the best way to go, but I think it creates a lot of issues for everybody. One, if I do my job right, if I'm doing it at the top of my ability, you won't need to go to them, because you'll know that if you pick up the phone or send me an email, whatever your needs are, it's going to get taken care of. It's going to get taken care of in a timely manner. But what it creates, though, is an opportunity for someone else's priority not to get done. And that's where I think you don't want to be in that situation where, again, not out of any malice, but, you have this issue. I always use the pothole. There's a pothole that needs to get filled. Staff was going to be doing something else, that, again, was a priority for someone else. And it takes that priority away, because whether, you see it or not, when you say, please do this, as staff, we want to get it done. And we want it done in a timely manner. And so we may bump the priorities that are important for that day to get done. And it may get you're looking for done, but it may put us out of sync with what else needs to be done. And someday that could be your priority that's not getting done because of that. So I think in the end, we need to come to an understanding of what that process needs to be if you have an issue. I think if I'm doing my job, capabilities that I know I'm capable of, you're not going to see that issue. And you'll be able to say, hey, there's this issue, Matt. Could you please, take a look at it and see what can be done? And I'll get back to you very quickly. And we'll have a good relationship to where, you won't even think about either calling, a subordinate of mine or another employee, because it's going to get done.
Thank you.
Okay. Fairly or unfairly, some of the criticisms that we've heard of previous city managers is their engagement with the community and their responsiveness to the community. How would you, obviously that's not you weren't there, but what would you do to make sure that we don't hear that type of response if you were successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think, over 30 years of my career, there's been times when I've heard that about myself as well. And, it usually happens when there's important things going on. I've always reflected back on those and look, well, what could I have done differently, first off, to prevent that from happening? But I do take it very seriously when someone contacts me. I make it a priority to return a call to them. And even more importantly, to get back to them after that initial phone call, because usually it's never resolved the first phone call. There's always something that I have to do to, see through what their issue is. And, doing that in a timely manner is something that, again, you keep track of the calls that are coming in. You keep track of how long it takes. There's kind of an internal, tracking and clock ticking in my mind to know that I need to get back to this person by this date. And I think it's really about organization, and it's an easy win, really. I mean, again, it may not be the right answer for that person. Well, it's probably the right answer, but it may not be the answer that person wants to hear, but they'll hear it. And, you just do everything you can to make sure you return those phone calls.
Quick follow-up, what would you do to ensure the same criticism is not that of the staff as well?
Well, I think the first thing is you lead by example. And, those are things you talk about during, your contacts with staff about, what your philosophy is and what you do yourself and what your expectation is. And, if you hear that those, if and again, I'm not hearing it here, so I'm just saying, a building department, they're not picking up the phone, they're not answering it. Well, I go and I find out why. And if there isn't a good reason, because sometimes there are very good reasons, but if there isn't a good reason, it's so noted. I have my conversation. I remind the staff of my expectations, and we see how it goes, and hopefully don't hear that again.
Thank you.
I'll follow up on that. That was actually the question I was going to ask, and I asked it in our personal interview as well. Is what's the public, what kind of access they would have to you. That being said, there has been issues in the past, so that damage with the public is, or that stuff with the public has been damaged, that reputation. So I'm going to follow up with that and say, how, day one a job, how can you start to repair that? Obviously, over time, you'll be able to show that in a broad sense, the reputation's there. So what do you think you could do to, right off the bat, fix that perception to let the people know that, hey, new sheriff in town, I'm here for you, reach out. If you could maybe describe how you might do that.
Well, I think one way, and I typically do this in all the communities where I become a manager, is I create opportunities to meet the public and allow them to, whether it's just, an open, town hall where people can come in and see me and talk and maybe just get a little bit of understanding of who I am and where I see the community going and what I think priorities are. Whether that's, going to, restaurants and doing the same thing there. I mean, there's, I think, a number of different ways you can at least provide the appearance of, in the actual, openness to having people contact you. But the reality is it's something that takes time to prove, and it also takes, contacts to prove. I mean, people have to call you and you have to return the phone call, especially when you know that it's not going to be a pleasant phone call, to prove that that's how and who you are.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Somehow,
Are you at loss for words?
no, somehow I thought it was kind of going in some sort of direction.
Random.
It is.
We'd be
Yeah,
random.
we were kind of going this way. You're the next step, Bill.
Now I get it. Now I get it. Yeah.
one through there?
Do you see the-
right from stage, whatever.
You see the pattern.
I'll ask you again.
You're not-
Yeah.
Talking to the
Talking to the
starship.
flying saucer, yeah. Explain your management style and my concern that I don't want a city manager who's basically just sitting in their office delegating. So I want a hands-on city manager who is dealing with subject directly with department heads and not simply just, handing off, assuming, which of course I assume that Sal is going to say in a similar position he's in once a city manager is hired. You're not just, something comes in and you push the button and you say, Sal, come in here, go take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
I want a hands-on city manager. Your approach. I just told you what I want.
On.
I just told you what I want.
Question for you.
So what am I going
There's
to
the
do?
answer to the question.
Now explain to me your previous experience.
I will expand upon that.
Would you please?
Dig him out of that.
I will remember now not to
Turn
phrase
off
the
his flying
question
saucer.
with a yes or no answer. If I was an attorney, I would have known better than that.
They teach you.
Yeah. I've watched legal shows, and it's like, don't ask something that can just be answered with a yes or no, because you're not going to get what you want.
I am not in this to be in an office. I mean, it's part of the job.
Are you willing to give up your office or maybe subdivide it?
Are you looking for an office bill?
If it can help, maybe get some extra revenue and we can do some road,
Oh, we can rent it out.
we could do a lot there, I suppose. I mean, it's a big office, so there's extras.
It's a nice office, isn't it?
I can't argue that.
Oh my God.
But
Oh, it is.
There goes the train.
I'm definitely not the type who want to sit back and again, I'm not in this to be someone ruling from a desk. I mean, I'm someone that wants to be out front, showing what expectations should be and what we can achieve by doing as much work as possible. So it's just kind of against my nature to be sitting back and waiting. Typically, if I'm behind a computer for a half hour, I have to be out somewhere for a couple hours after that because I can't stand sitting still.
You being the person who is by charter in control of the agenda, your approach to agenda items, it's sometimes been a problem in the past that just basically anything makes it on the agenda. And as I've often said, city council is in the business of doing business. And a lot of times, issues that really on the face of it are just losers to begin with, but we wind up spending a lot of time on it. Your approach to agendas, seeing as that's the way our city is designed, that you are in fact in charge of the agenda.
So I like efficient, well-run meetings. It's again, there's a lot more things you could be doing other than sitting in a meeting all night. But with that being said, I think, there is value to discussion of a lot of different things. But I think, if it's coming together and saying, we're going to create opportunities to have discussions of ideas, which again, I think are important to do, we can figure out how to do that and make sure that there is time for conversations like that. But as it relates to, action items, you're going to get an item that has been researched, that has the backups necessary to provide an understanding of why we're taking an action. And if you don't have that, you need to let me know. We need to do better, and we'll darn well do better on that. But generally, the items that we bring are going to have a lot of backup and support of why we need to take an action. And so, from the staff perspective, we're not going to bring something to the table that hasn't been well thought out. We're not going to bring an idea. We are going to bring here's the facts, here's, what the action, what we perceive the outcome of that action to be, and how it benefits the residents and the community. But again, I think it's important to have the ability at times during council meetings, and again, councils do it a lot of different ways. They have work sessions, they have, a lot of different things can be done. But I think it is important for council to be able to discuss ideas and put ideas out there and talk, with the public about what these ideas are, because, again, an idea today may become a necessity 6-8 months down the road, and it's better to have that conversation now and start preparing for it rather than waiting till it becomes a big issue.
And again, obviously, to state what everybody up here knows is the obvious, is there will be agenda items that are proposed by consensus from the council. And I fully expect that I'm not suggesting you stonewall, issues. Again, from what I'm hearing, from what you're saying, you would, when possible, when directed, or even on other agenda items, you'd do a substantial amount of background research to where, unless, depending on how you're directed, we're not just walking into a blind agenda item.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's, I was going to say that is that, I would be doing you a disservice if you decide that you want to, say, I want an agenda item to talk about the vanilla ice cream. Not a lot of direction there, is there? You just want to talk about vanilla ice cream.
Can we vote on vanilla ice cream right now?
Aye.
Aye.
Have that conversation about, what specifically about vanilla ice cream is it you want to talk about? And again, to make it productive, not only for you, but for everyone else, let me do what I'm good at, do the research, look into it, find out what the benefits of vanilla ice cream are. And so that way, everyone has a talking point and can have a conversation rather than, not knowing what really this item's about or, where people want to go with this item. It's better to actually have a little bit of background and direction so you can be productive. Because, what I think everyone hates, I know I hate it, is just to have a conversation to have a conversation. We want to have that conversation for a reason.
Everybody hates that. There are certain folks, and I'm not going to name any names, that just like the sound of their own voice.
Fortunately, I don't know. Everybody, is coming from a perspective of wanting to do something very good for this community.
I was teasing a gentleman sitting behind you there. Yeah, I couldn't help it. I'll finish up with one other food-related question that, it's been on my mind since 2009. Sometimes the meetings run long, and lately they've been running longer. Do you think you could find it in your budget to provide pizza during city council?
I knew pizza was going to come up.
Didn't take me long either, did it?
That is something in other communities.
Came out, I knew pizza.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. He did it with the vanilla ice cream.
That again is.
I'm sorry, that's really not a serious question. I shouldn't waste your time.
Answer that question for you. I have a lot of background.
Because, there's a lot of times I'd love a slice of
This
pie
is
up
called
there.
thinking on your feet right now.
And the other thing, it would probably take 3 meetings of council discussion to decide whether we're doing Chicago style or New York style.
No, there's no discussion.
Yeah, see?
I had a council where we would provide dinners before the meeting, and it became a nightmare from my perspective because, as staff, we had to, order it and make sure it got delivered. But even worse, we had to pick it. And I'll tell you, we would try to alternate between all the different restaurants, but there would always be a council member there who says, why don't we have pizza? Why don't we have subs? Why don't we? And so, we were at a.
We run into this.
Yes, and so we actually had a goal setting session. Not about that, but we had this goal setting, and so I brought up. I said, listen, because I think it's important for you to fill a part of the decision making process in this. Could we, from here on out, have whoever does the pledge and the prayer at that council meeting to also pick the menu? And they just love that idea. And so they, we put what the budget was, and we were spending probably about $250, $300 a meal. And so they knew that's what it was, and we gave them the list of, the different restaurants and which one's next and all that. And they got to choose. And, they still complained at times, but they didn't complain to us staff. They complained to each other.
Works.
And if
Well,
you're,
hopefully you'll never have to go through that with this council.
and if you're curious why meetings run long, that's why.
Just
Just kidding, Bill. Love you.
This is a love fest going on here.
I can feel the.
All right, my turn.
Yeah, by the way, I yield.
One of the first things when you sat down with me, you volunteered the issues that you saw with Port Richey, and I'd like you to share that with. It was not a question. You sat down and you said to me, "I have some issues," and I really like that because we're here to fix the issue.
And one of them can't be Bill Colombo.
Can't be fixed.
You could share that with.
Yeah, let me just correct it. It's not my issue.
Well, no, it's Port Richey issues, but I like the fact that the first thing because that's what we're here to do is fix issues. We're not here to just look pretty. We're here to fix problems and issues and support the things that we are doing well, which we are doing a lot of things well. But there are things that need to be fixed. And so I'd like you to share those 3 issues, if you don't mind.
There's actually 4 issues.
Well, you only told me 3, so there you go.
You missed the last one.
Oh, I didn't write it down then. Okay, go ahead.
There is a 4th. Let me just say that from the standpoint of why you have a city manager is because there are bad things or not great things going on, right? Good things you guys get the benefit of and take the credit for all the time. That's what city manager does is, looks to what is not going right within the community so we can be kind of out in front and try to address those issues. And so with Councilor Rodriguez, what I did was put it into 4 buckets. The first bucket is, one I think you all know, we kind of talk about it's the infrastructure. There is a need here. And there's also probably a financial inability to do everything all at the same time to fix that. So, we're going to have to plan. And we're going to have to put together a way to go about doing this. But, we can't just close our eyes and because we don't have the financial wherewithal today to do it, close our eyes and say, well, we're not going to do it and we're just going to wait till we have money. It may never come, and the issues are not going to go away. See, the second, now my memory is going here. The second item was with staff, and I think there's opportunity here to, provide a better work environment and more productive elements to the staff, whether it's, improvements in the IT infrastructure, the programs that we have, implementing good policies and procedures. So, things that we do on a daily basis happen the same way every day and allows us to provide the information not only that you're asking for, but the public's asking for as well. So the third item is the communication between the city and the residents. I just, again, I can't say because I haven't necessarily heard this from anybody, but just looking at, how I think I used the video council meetings that, it's the perspective is so far away, I can't tell who's talking, and you kind of, lose that connection to people when you can't see their face. Are they telling me the truth? Who said that? And so it just is a communication with the residents, but also providing forms of communications. Like I said, one way that I kind of go about letting them know that there's a new manager in town, creating opportunities for communication. And I think we would have to work together maybe to do that and find those opportunities where the public can interact with the council, the mayor and council. I mean, the mayor's already doing that to a certain degree with the town hall meetings. Which I've seen work really well in other communities as well. But, providing that touch with the residents so they can get to know us and understand what they don't hear or see from us on a daily basis. And then the 4th bucket is working with you to develop a vision for the community. And I think that's a very important aspect because it's hard to communicate with residents if you don't have something to communicate with them about. And that is usually a lot easier when you're talking about the vision of what Port Richey is going to be, why we're doing what we're doing. If you can't articulate that, then you have a problem in communication. And I think, as I had said during our meeting, these kind of overlay each other. And you can't really focus on one without focusing on the other because, for instance, without, true resident support, we're going to have a hard time doing that utility, right? And if we don't have the vision, we don't have the ability to communicate what the community can be. So it allows us to, get the necessary financial resources to do all these wonderful projects that we're capable of doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know we started a little bit late. How much time we have left?
He was from 2:05 to 2:35, so you started about 5 minutes, so two.
Yeah, I mean, by my reckoning, he's got about 5 minutes left.
And the next one comes in, we can put a 30-minute clock up there just to kind of keep us on track. Yeah.
I think it was 12. You guys
It was
have-
12 after when he
He
started.
has 12, he has till 42.
Keep talking.
I'll follow up on a question. Obviously, funding is a huge concern here. We need to bring in money. If you could tell me your thoughts on growth and possibly lobbyists, different ways, bonding. Tell me what your process is to.
Sorry.
You got buzzed.
Sorry, I can't
Can I
say.
have that buzzer? I'd like to have that.
Finish this question.
If you could just take us through what your experience is and how well you would be suited to bring in income to the city.
Yeah. So, as you reviewed my resume, you obviously saw that, we had small projects to large, anywhere from a couple $100,000 capital projects to, hundreds of millions of dollars of capital projects. And depending upon what the appetite of the community is and council is related to bonding, I mean, there's sometimes that's the best way to go because it allows you to take care of issues and you pay for it over 20 years. I mean, it makes sense, but you do it not haphazardly. You do it as part of a plan because, there may be something else you have to do later on. And, once you spend the dollar, you've spent the dollar. You can't spend it again. So you have to have a good plan on how you're going to be doing things over the next 5 and 10 years if you're going to be doing that. But I think, again, there's a lot of need without the glamorous things, the stuff that people see. I mean, there's a lot of need just in the utilities that we're going to have to talk about a plan and understand how we're going to fund it and how we can do all these other things that I think the community is going to want to do as well. And that may mean we need to bring people in, but it's also working with the different partners we have in both the state and federal government. Again, some of the communities I've been in, we were very successful working with our federal partners and getting money. Sometimes it was because we had already taken the time to do the planning, the money became available, we were there in line, they knew that they could trust us to get the job done and get it done right. And we were able to save our taxpayers a lot of money. Town Farm Road was a good example in Enfield, Connecticut. $10 million project because we had done the planning and we knew what we were going to do. We were in line when the money came available and saved the community $10 million.
And then the growth part, as far as growth, what?
And I think I think someone had said that we haven't annexed in a long time or even tried to annex. Come from Ohio, I tell you, annexation is always a hot topic in Ohio. I think growth is good, but again, I think you need to know what you're doing and where you're going, and you're not growing for growth's sake. You're growing because it's going to benefit the community, and so you don't go out and just annex a large piece of property with thousands of residents. That's going to stretch the services you're already offering to your existing resident base. So, you have to have some foresight in doing that, whether it's, annexation, whether it's, recruiting. City of Batavia did a lot of economic development there, as well as in Enfield and Lincoln Park and St. Clair Shores as well. So there's quite a bit, which is actually one of the fun things I love to do is economic development.
How much time we have left?
We can go over if we need to, but
Yeah, we can
that's
go
what
pretty hard if we want.
Benjamin said.
There's no questions, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I think I'm done.
Okay, one other question, which just popped into my little brain. So how many meetings of ours would you say that you watched?
like really watched.
Ballpark.
They were on my phone playing.
Well, that you were aware,
Over here, it
you
was,
were aware of what was going on. I mean,
it's, I think about 5, maybe 6, yeah.
what was there? And this is a question not meant to. Yeah, it's probably directed to all of us up here. Was there anything in those meetings that you felt that we should have gone in a different direction, or you had an idea that you were like, if I was there, I would have suggested it?
I didn't have that thought at all because, I don't have the background that you have on the topics that you were talking about. 2, I didn't have the materials, and I think it's kind of hard, again, when I watch those, I watch it more to see, one, how you interact. And because I think that's an important thing. I've unfortunately been with councils that do not like each other. And that's not a very pleasant experience as a manager to go through.
We love each other.
And so I want to see.
Yeah,
True. Afterwards, I promise.
bring it in, brother. Bring it in. No, I mean, you really don't have to expand on it. It was kind of a simple question that, if you watched a number of meetings and, there was a lot of discussion and you thought, geez, if I was there, I would have suggested it. That's all I was asking.
Yeah, I guess I
I
don't.
don't expect that you would answer, that you might have an answer to that, but I just thought
If you want me to, I could take the next 20 minutes to get an answer for that, but I don't think you
I
want.
really, you don't have to do that. No, you've done fine in your answer.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Nope, I'm good.
Well, Matt, I tell you, again, I appreciate your interest. I appreciate you coming out and answering our questions. And obviously, we got a tough decision to make. And I look forward to seeing how that pans out.
Yeah, well, good luck. I wish you the best in making the decision. I do believe you do have a tough choice ahead of you, so.
And good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you very
Matt. Okay. You always distract me. I believe so. No, you're cool.
So in the first interview, we went through vanilla ice cream, pizza, and hugs.
And they all came from Bill.
It's kind of the council we are.
Speak for yourself, young man. Speak for
I
yourself.
don't know what's gonna happen if somebody picks chocolate ice cream.
You imagine what would take for
And it's World War III.
what toppings, what we're ordering from.
Yeah, that's we just can't keep us.
That's fine, don't you think?
I'm just gonna.
I wouldn't either.
Just get a garbage pie and give them a fork and they can pick off whatever they don't
Oh,
like.
God, no, not a salad.
We're talking about pizza over here. Leave us alone.
Still?
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce Mark Rooney. He's one of the candidates, and he's going to do his 5-minute spiel. And I apologize. One thing I want to warn you, don't talk about food. With that, take it away.
I walked by the door a couple times and I saw you all laughing. I was like, oh, I hope they're laughing with him, not at him. Crowd, they're in a good mood at least. But folks, thank you for having all of us here, but especially myself. I really enjoyed the time last night as well as today, one-on-one. And I enjoy the community, what I've seen of it, and what the reason I applied is the challenges and opportunities, I think, match well on my resume, and I won't go into much depth because I think we've talked about that a lot on one-on-one, but your need for infrastructure, that's something I've done in almost every one of my communities, and I've had great success on not just executing the projects on time and on budget, but finding the planning tools and the goal setting and getting the vision clear so the staff then can execute your priorities. And so I've had a lot of work with councils on doing that and setting those goals. And then finding the financial wherewithal to do that. I think that Sal has set the table a little bit already, identifying your needs for the infrastructure. And you're all clear in the brochure and then one-on-one and the last night with your community that you want to do it. So that's half the battle. There's consensus on let's do it. Now it's just which ones and how do we set which priorities. So I feel confident that I can work with you on that and work with getting a financial advisor to help Finance Director Goslin and I, look at your debt limit and your debt bandwidth that you can comfortably take on so much debt in over a course of time to accomplish this. That's the other aspect of it. And I've had great success, and I could cite my resume, but you, as well as the public, have seen my resume and those projects that have been done. And then growth means different things to different people. And I've went through those tough times with smaller communities, and any change is threatening to the status quo. You've really got to communicate and reach out to the public and spend the time joining, whether it's the Rotary, Lions Club, and just being where the public is at and having an opportunity so they can ask you questions and you can listen to their concerns, bring them back with the staff, talk about the problems they elicit, and get our staff work done so when we bring it before you, we're value added to the process, not added to the confusion and chaos and the conflict. So over the years, I've developed some good conflict resolution. Tours in Iraq was all conflict, and I can't say I was very successful at all that, but even at that, I was good at meeting with the Arab councils, with the Arab armies, and coming up with their solution, not an American solution. So even in that setting, I think I had some great success on everything. Didn't have to be, the problem didn't have to result of the solution like a baby harp seal on an ice pack, dead and bloody. That was the last resort, and we can't do that in local government. We love each other. We love our town. That's why you serve, and that brings me to service. That's what I love about this profession, because where else do you get the satisfaction of doing something for the greater good, building stuff that lasts well beyond you? It's the Athenian oath in practice, and you take the city as you received it, but pass it on greater than the sum total it was when you arrived. And that, to me, is way beyond the dollars and the benefits that you get of doing this job, is that satisfaction that you look back over your career and go, I helped and I was part of doing something for the greater good and making a difference for people's lives. And that's why you serve. You want the quality of life for your community to be better and to address issues. And so I'd love to be part of that, and I think if you look at my resume, I've had a lot of projects that achieve that. And just, the 5-minute thing, stuff that's not in the resume and not about your brochure is I have, my father was the chairman of the board, the village president for 40 plus years. Every time he said he wasn't running, they wrote his name in. Small town of 110 that grew to 220, so half of them were relatives probably.
Double.
So, but I know what block grants as an 8-year-old did to change my father. Then he could never not be in office because he got a block grant from LBJ that brought water and sewer lines to the community. And it was just so changing to the quality of everybody's life. And I went back for a reunion, and they said, hey, can you update and get us a grant to fix the lagoon? It's failing. The old man's gone. But I mean, that's because they know I'm in the profession and stuff. But it's, it's generational change that you can bring, positive stuff and that's the service part of this business that I just love. And you've got a great staff from what I've seen. That's why I can say, honestly, I'd love to join with your staff because they seem to enjoy themselves. They laugh easily, and they look like they enjoy each other in the work. Sal, and that's, you know what? You point at Sal, and I was going to end with that. It would be a pleasure to work some places. I told Sal yesterday, I, for life me, don't know why you weren't a candidate, because if you were, after watching your meetings, I wouldn't be here, because the man deserves the recognition he does get.
Thank you, Sal.
Now we just got to get him to smile.
Unfortunately, Sal doesn't have a vote in this. But,
I don't, sorry.
But it
Good try.
speaks well to the group, though, too, that they really rallied behind Sal. And even in Port Richey, they know of him, because I stopped to see the manager the other day to see relations on the joint project you're trying to do with the bridge and the underpass and the clerk said, you know, Sal's done every job over there, and he is excellent at being the clerk. And then somebody else said something else, and I thought, that's a positive thing, that you should all know how well he's received. And so the culture is not broken. You've got to probably work on some succession planning, because you got to replace, and not just replace the department head, but replace the foreman, the captain, you know, of the public safety. So you got to groom your people, and you've already done something with your wage and salary survey to try to address that, so you don't lose the talent that you have, and you can build on it and have a long-range plan. So in that sense, that's why I really feel comfortable saying I want to join this team, because I think it's a healthy place. The one area that could be the most difficult and hard to say to the people you're trying to ask for a job is yourselves. And reviewing the charter, going over roles and responsibilities to diffuse any conflict and have better meetings. That if everybody knew their roles and responsibilities, it makes staff more comfortable, and I think you get more done. So that'd be the one area I've worked on that before, and I can say successfully. I was the first administrator in Highwood, a small town that went through extreme change and growth. I lasted 7 years and left for a bigger community because it was just time. And in the next 10 years, they had 7 managers. So I do have some people skills, even though I was trained by the U.S. Army, the biggest bureaucracy of the world. But people forget, in the Army, in combat arms, you say, follow me, and everybody behind you's got an automatic weapon. So you might want to think twice on how you treated them. A little humor. And that's the other thing. If you don't have a sense of humor, you cannot do this job, because you got to laugh at yourself and the things that go on. And JFK said it right. There's 3 things in life: God, human folly, and humor. The first 2 we can't do much with, but we certainly can work on the humor and enjoying life and not taking ourselves too seriously. And that I take the job very seriously, but not myself. And in the service level on that, and the military background I have too, I learned a great deal from that about myself and how to lead people and work with diverse groups of people. And there's been a Rooney in service since 1942. Sorry. Thinking about my wife, she's not happy with me, because my 2 boys have graduated college. They, one had a 3.8 in the business college in finance and international finance, and the other one just finished and he had a 3.9. COVID kind of helped him, I think. He kind of gamed the system, he says. But they're both, one is in Ranger School, graduates in 3 weeks, and he'll move on, and then the next one is going to try to follow King, who's coming next, into special operations. That's what he wants to do. And I love it in a way, but my wife is like, it's all your fault. They could have been on Wall Street. But service, it is passed on. And if it's not modeled to you, you don't have it. And I think the model that you have with your staff is good, and I'd like to join that, improve that, and build upon it, not change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. What questions?
So how would you address the council involvement with the city staff? And I'm going through some things in history with the city where a resident is elected as a council person, and they feel or have that feeling of entitlement that they could do whatever they want to within the city, approach any staff member, open the door. How would you address that issue with the council? And the second part of it is, what guidance would you give that staff member, that director, that manager, when they are approached by an elected official, how they should address that?
Well, number one, I did try to touch on that a little bit. I think Nancy and I'd get together and work out a roles and responsibility, a review of the charter, have a workshop, and I would do it in the context for the public. I'm new. I'm not from Florida. There's a lot about Florida law that we should review in the charter and be clear, because friction is eliminated when people have clarity and when communication has been agreed to and understood. And maybe a lot of things that in life, there's a lack of understanding, not a desire to commit go deviate from the standard. Sometimes the standards just haven't been communicated, I believe. And so I believe most people are good, and if you give them a chance to see what right looks like and get a consensus with the council of what our rules of the road are going to be, you avoid that kind of conflict. But what I always communicate to the staff is be polite, but be firm in saying that, yes, counselor, I'm looking at Linda. Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand. I hear what you're saying. I'm taking a note, but I'm going to give that to my boss, and he's going to talk to his boss and the manager. But they will never say no to you. They will never say they don't have time for you. They'll be very polite, but they also have to know that I have their back if they don't jump and change direction. Because you don't know that, the operations manager or the utility manager's got a plan for the month, not just the day. Mm-hmm. And if you take and deviate from your, it can just have a ripple effect that creates all type of inefficiencies for that department. And we just need to communicate. I, as the manager, need to communicate that to you so that you buy into why they didn't drop what they were doing and change. Simple request for information is going to happen without a drop of the hat. But to your point, the staff has to know that the manager has their back.
Perfect.
Up and down the chain.
Perfect. And for the record, I never said how would you address Mrs. Rodriguez doing this. All I said
I was wondering why you were looking at Linda. It was like Linda. I'm looking at you. And you're like, whoa.
Not only am I looking at you, I'm going to call you out.
It's okay. I have big shoulders.
She smiled, so I said I can go there.
Linda, I'm looking at you.
I take full responsibility
Linda?
for telling them mow that lawn.
You know what? And that's why we don't do everything by text and email, because the context would have been lost, and Linda could have been mad that I used her as an example in an email.
I hate texting. Unless it says feed me at someplace for a drink, then I'm okay with it.
I like a text when it says the water's rising, get the hell out of your neighborhood.
Time and place for every form of communication.
I'll ask the same question I asked previously, probably in a different context because I don't remember it exactly, but fairly or unfairly, we have heard of criticism of previous city managers and administrations and staff that they have not been responsive or communicative to what would you do to address that issue, both for yourself, or not necessarily for yourself, but the office of the city manager, and then for the rest of the staff as well?
Well, first off, I would try to get a little more fidelity on the specific criticism and talk to the existing staff and Sal and say, okay, give me the history on this, and why is there a perception? Not say there is, why is there a perception, and on what kind of specifics. But really, in this business, I think I've said it to a couple of you, you never hear from the people that said, great job, everything's great. You only hear the critics, but what did you do with the critics? You learn, if you properly, you learn and adapt your styles and your organizational processes to improve, so you stop hearing the same criticism. But I would just look at each department in a very open way and say, let's talk about the problem, what are possible solutions, without putting the finger at you're wrong and you got to fix yourself. Because instantly people shut down. Talk more broadly to address that issue and how can we improve as an organization without saying it's the police or it's any one specific department. But yeah, you need to address it. And especially in the manager's office, I heard it from some of the community last night, he wouldn't take meetings. You know what? I might not take the meeting right now because I'm in a budget discussion with staff, but I'd have my executive assistant make sure that I schedule a time, even if I didn't come out and say I need to do that. I would always make time to see the resident. They might want an hour and I might give them 5 minutes sometimes, but if we schedule something, I'd hear them out. And if you don't model that, why would anybody else do it and your staff?
One of the other items that has been perhaps a weakness of the city is engagement with the businesses of the city. One of the reasons for that maybe is there's no one single entity that exists that represents the businesses or something of that nature. With that background that I just said, what would you do to, or would you want to increase engagement with the city, and how would you address that issue, knowing that there's no central business unit that represents city interests from the business?
Right. Well, as I understand it, the Chamber of Commerce is more of a regional chamber, but I would still reach out to that entity with Sal saying, okay, what's the history of how we've gotten our word out through that organization? What's the limits? What are its strengths? Build on its opportunities to communicate with their membership that are our business community. And the fact that you don't have an economic development director per se, that falls under other duties as assigned to the manager has to take on that role. So I would have to carve out time for engagement, and it can be done the official village city webpage, social media blasts out on key items to invite people to meetings. And I would talk to the 5 of you and the existing staff. Who and what are the stakeholders that are most important to get our message out? And what opportunities are we just not capitalizing on? And then brainstorm with the group of staff, how do we address that type of an issue? How do we solve it? And I always believe in including as many people as far down in the organization to solve a problem and come up with a solution as possible. Because I got hired to be the manager, I'm not omnipotent. No one in this role is. They need their staff, they need the council to help give them advice, because you've lived here your whole, and you know the community. So I'd kind of turn it back saying, okay, where are we lacking, and let's brainstorm on how we could address that. What's the most successful route? The key stakeholders, though.
So my question, and I've asked him when we met earlier, but I'd like to share that with the rest of the council. So where do you see the city of Port Richey 3 to 5 years from now under your leadership?
We've established our goals for capital. We've done the necessary engagement with the public and sold the first bond and doing water, because it's 2% EPA revolving loan interest rate. We have success at completing our first list of priorities, so we have demonstrated to the public and to the business community that they can trust us with using debt to address the infrastructure, and then we trust ourselves as senior leaders that we've got the capacity to manage it properly, that we can then go on to a bigger bond issuance to address even more of that issue. So start out small enough so we definitely are successful, but meaningful enough that it was worth, it's got to be, if you go out for a bond, if you don't go for 10 million or close to it, it's not worth the cost of paying bond counsel and lawyers to do it. But that would get us established some credibility, and then in the next wave, we'd go even further because we'd develop some bench strength in the staff on how to manage those kind of projects. Because if you haven't done it or done it in a while, you need to have the staff capacity to do it. And so I think then the success of that would be that the public, votes with their selecting you all to continue. And by and large, then I keep my job.
Oh, okay. Two things. You spoke about your long family history of public service, and that public service is important to you, and that's also why we are up here. I have to tell you, we're up here for the massive paychecks we get.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, you can't forget that. I mean, I crack myself up. Again, I say that because you also mentioned, I take my job seriously, but as many people up here will readily agree, I don't take myself too seriously. And I do think humor fosters good relationships between everybody.
I'm still not giving you a hug.
I'll give you two.
The day will come. The day will come. You may be falling down drunk, but the day will come. Okay.
Yeah, I can't promise any hugs.
No. And I've thoroughly read your job description, and fostering hugs is really not in your wheelhouse.
Nancy would
probably never
be strongly against
it.
it.
Are you a hugger? No, you're not. Okay. Well,
Is that a serious question?
No, I just told you I don't take myself seriously. I will again follow up with a question that I believe I asked you, and I've asked. I'm sorry. I'll follow up with a question I believe I asked you, and also the others, and that is basically your management style. It is very important to me that I've got a manager sitting up there who is not sitting in the office pushing a button and delegating.
Don't give the answer.
Assuming Sal, is in the position he's in, which I'm sure there is, depending your, looking at your glowing review of him. But, I don't want basically a city manager who's sitting in there. So your approach, how you have in the past handled your interactions, mostly with your senior department heads. Obviously, I don't expect you to be out there, while somebody's fixing a leak, looking over the shoulder of a utility worker saying, don't use that Band-Aid, use another one.
Right. You know what? Everybody in this business knows the power of collaboration, and they like to think they're collaborative. I did early in my career, but I know some of my blind spots, and I work on it. But collaboration requires something that I didn't have a great deal when I started this, was patience. Because I came from a military culture where you get it done yesterday.
And that's, generally speaking, when I hear military, I think about that,
And it took me a while to kind of realize that we're a mission-driven people always, but our people are very committed too. The civilian structure are committed, but not in that vein. And so you have to change your management style and have more patience. So I've worked. That's what I should have told you too in the opening. I am a far better James Mark Rooney person today than I was 10 years ago, because I am collaborative, because I've learned the power of listening and including staff by saying, here's the problem. Are we all thinking that that's the problem? Because there's nothing worse than spending your time addressing the wrong problem or a symptom of the problem. And if you do that in a vacuum by yourself or with just a select group, the danger increases dramatically of solving the wrong problem and with a solution that is kind of in your own little group's blind spot. It sounds great to everybody in the group because they didn't take any outside opinions. So that's why I try to listen and ask the staff, when you come for one of these sessions where we're going to address an issue, make sure when you come you've already let a couple levels down in your part of the organization say how they view it.
Okay.
And that's the thing. I check on my own learning and make sure that staff, when we've said this is how we're going to change or do something, I go out not to micromanage, but just to have a session on a break to hear how well it's understood. How is that vision of, as I like to say in my resume, I had an example of get to yes. Because we have so often in the public administration world not changed our processes for 50 years. It was built in a bureaucratic time where no one trusted because of corruption. They made all these different rules, and we didn't have the power of these iPhones where everybody lives and expects instantaneous communication and tracking. We have to change the process, but who's best at those processes? The people at the front line. Listen to them. Let them help you come up with some of the solutions.
Okay.
I'm more collaborative and more patient than I ever would have been. And my style is, I know I'm responsible for the vision and communicating your goals and priorities to the staff so that we have clarity up and down to achieve the results that you want.
And again, I don't know, I mentioned it to some folks, maybe not some of the others, maybe not even people on council, but I have a grandson that's a major in the U.S. Army, graduate of the Citadel. And obviously I've had a lot of talks with him about his various postings. But you know, the military, generally everybody you're working with, if you're in a command position, has got one less insignia than you do. And, you know, it's like, you know, yes, sir, you know. And it sounds to me like you've made that transition.
I've made that transition.
Yeah, that's just a comment. That's not necessarily a question to you because you broached it yourself. I have one other quick question, or both a statement and a question. We used to have a West Pasco Chamber of Commerce. Okay, that basically essentially dissolved and became part of the Greater Pasco Chamber of Commerce, which is a much larger organization that covers a lot of areas that draws a lot more function than us. For instance, they are far more interested in Newport Richey than they are in Port Richey. They're not going to be a lot of help. We have two examples I'll come up with that are issues for me. We have a fireworks show coming up that we all have spoken about, and we budgeted for it. We're paying for it totally out of the city. It's on the waterfront. The waterfront business owners benefit massively. One of them even put out ads acting like they were paying for it. They're not paying a nickel. We got a massive amount of CRA funds going into the waterfront district once again. We have no public-private partnerships. What do you think you can do to actually foster public-private partnerships without, as Todd pointed out, any sort of centralized business organization? And why they don't have one down there, I don't know. Maybe they just prefer.
They're starting.
Yeah, I've been hearing that for more years than you can think.
I'll give you an update on that just real quick. It's approved by IRS. They're just waiting on the 501(c)(3).
Yeah, they had one. They had one before.
It's gotta get another one.
They met
But it's
twice, and
been
it just
formed.
nothing ever came of it. But something does. I really hope it does.
Yeah, it's
Bless you. I'm sorry. But the question to you is, you know, what do you think you could do absent an organization? And I know I'm going over the clock, and
You're fine.
you know, you're gonna have.
That was just to make sure that we.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
fine, Bill.
Yeah.
I'm trying to track a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but you know, we've been known to go off track.
But on that, I would talk to Nancy and say, okay, there's rules on how we accept any kind of donation.
She doesn't.
501(c) is the way to do it, and you have to establish that. And it can be a 501(c) part of the, you know, of your district even, if you do it right and set it up structurally, so that the business owners on something like that can make a contribution to defer that cost and get credit for it. But ideally, I would talk to the Pasco County and why, and my partner over at Port Richey, I'd see it as an self-interest. We have issues here, different than the rest of the Greater Chamber of Commerce, that's bringing people to our boat launch that are just taken away from the quality of life of our communities collectively. What can we do to get more out of the greater or reestablish a local version? But then that's money, because you have to pay an executive director. I've had some great executive directors from chambers that just do wonderful outreach work, but the members of the business community pay that salary, not the city. So you'd have to see if there's enough groundswell of the business owners and the restaurants versus the Honda dealership. They need to all be willing to do that. And I'd be willing to make a run at that, because I see the benefit for them as well as the city, because then it's like a laser focus for your business community. They have a point of contact that engages us directly on what their needs are. And they're diverse. The Honda dealership, you know, it's not going to have the same focus, but they want the community to thrive, because they want a thriving community, because they got a big investment.
Right, and again, in the case of fireworks show, there could be
That's just, yeah, sponsorship.
Honda may not, you know, again, the fireworks show is designed to be enjoyed by people all around the bayou. People up here know I look for the biggest fireworks I get, because the more people in the city can watch it without going to the waterfront park. But, you know, the direct benefit to for the businesses down on the waterfront is significant. So,
but soliciting funds from the manager's office or any office of the village or the city is always fraught with danger.
Right, so you're better off with an organization.
Yes, because they're going to say, hey, remember last week when I gave you $40,000 for that show? They're going to want something.
Agreeing with you, Newport Richey up until this year, I don't know what's going to happen next year, but they had the local Kia dealership basically in conjunction with a downtown Main Street.org, you know, basically finance it, and then the city, basically their cost was police supervision, setting up the park and doing all that sort of thing.
A Main Street organization can be a 501(c) that can do those type of things for you.
Right.
And with a lot of staff involvement, but not direct city, because you don't want to ask for...
I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. I yield the floor to Madam Linda. I'm still looking at you.
Linda,
A lot of things going through my
if you want
mind.
to rearrange chairs for the next meeting, we can do that.
I could handle Bill more than you guys
Yeah,
can.
probably true.
Actually, yeah.
I was gonna say, we're keeping him on.
Yeah.
You know,
Give him back to me in about 2 seconds.
That's the
He's
absolute.
yours.
That's the absolute truth. Yeah. Yeah.
In our meeting, I just wanted to
She
reiterate,
kicks me all the time.
not hard enough, obviously.
Oh God, the bruises I have.
One of the things we talked about when I talked to you, and I wanted you to share, you might have shared with them, but about, we know that dredging is an important issue for our city that we have gone nowhere with for many years. So I'd like you to share your views on that, please.
the canals in your brochure, I think it makes it clear that that's not a city set of infrastructure. Never was, and I don't think you'd ever have anybody on staff that ever would take it on, because it's a constant drain. I would think that it is a problem, and it's a very localized problem and benefit, because the benefit I would do is what we in other states use is this special service area that is set up, and you do there's ones that you could vote of 5 and impose. I would not advise that, because it could be a significant cost. So you'd work with the group that's interested in that dredging and say, here's what we can do as the city. We can set up a special service area, but we need to do it as a vote, a referendum vote of the PIN numbers involved on all the canals, or just the one canal that had a support groundswell to do it. We can issue the debt. We can help manage the project. But the PIN numbers, property tax PIN numbers, can be done by just PIN numbers or linear feet of frontage. Decides how much each PIN number will pay. And if it's $10 and it's spread over 10 people, it's a great thing. It's $1 each, but it's not the number. It is probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it may be only spread over 100 property taxes. So they have to really want it because they're going to put it on their tax bill for 20 years, not the rest of the community, because of equity issues. To have somebody that is never going to have a direct or indirect benefit of that pay for that is just defies the sense of equity and justice that we're supposed to, as a public administration professional, do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? I think you guys all really took care of a lot of the issues. Thank you.
Mr.
I'm still afraid to use the equity word. The governor's not going to hear me say that word and think I have to.
Well, I believe, following up on what you said, by state statute, we can't oppose a tax without doing a vote, something like that.
We what?
Something like charging per property owner to have canals dredged. We would have to have a referendum on that amongst the affected property.
Yeah, you have to.
So it's not like an option. We cannot unilaterally impose that any kind of tax. They basically have to vote it up. So.
And I had that experience in one of the communities. We annexed a community in that didn't have sidewalks or proper stormwater.
Right.
And instead of having the whole community pay for that big fee, we ended up creating a special service area to correct the sins of developing in the county with no rules. So I've done it, and yeah, you make a lot of people happy, but some people are like, I'm perfectly fine with Bill's flooding. Doesn't flood on my street. So you have winners and losers always.
Get that. All right.
Just hit a sore subject with him.
Yeah, what thing?
Flooding?
Yeah.
Well,
that was the storm's fault. That wasn't anything the city did. I just happen to live about 4 inches too low.
You show. Well, one of the things I do on, you say that, and I thought about that after you talked about the storms, is doing an after-action review with the staff and saying, was there some flooding caused by the pickup trucks? I love pickup trucks, especially the guys with the lifts, but did they go down and create wakes after, during, that created more havoc? If we would have closed the road, could we have prevented some other issues? And, we have to do those kind of after actions. What did we do right? What could we do better? And learn from it, and then put it in our book so we don't forget.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. I just want to, again, reiterate, appreciate you coming and spend time with us, and your interest in the city, and wish you good luck. You got a tough decision to make, but thank you for your interest.
Well, I hope I didn't ramble on and stuff, but
Enjoyed the conversation.
Bill, make sure the minutes reflect that you didn't call Linda a madam. Because if it was in the wrong context, it's going to come out bad.
Thanks, Mark.
Good, thank you. Thanks for talking.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think can we take a quick 5-minute break for bio?
You okay?
Absolutely.
We're getting there. I concentrate better when my bladder is. I hear that's. What do you think so far? I think Koppler. King is probably everybody is I mean, it's a tough call. I mean, all these guys have. I don't have anything planned at the moment. Okay. No, Russo. Most people are not.
just wanted to see if you were gonna lower it. Then I was gonna take offense.
You're welcome to take it in any direction you need.
Is it already on?
Yes. Yep. Just during the break, I turned it off. So she mentioned it.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I begin, what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank the mayor, the council, and Mr. Basinger for the opportunity to interview for today's city manager position. So thank you guys for your time, and hopefully I can sell you on a good model of city manager to take over and work for you in the future. One thing that I would like to do is I'd like to thank Sal, Ashley, and the rest of the team here and the staff for everything that you guys did for this recruitment piece, because it's been outstanding in keeping everybody on time and running the program well. So thank you guys very much for what you do. Thank you. Sal, I know you've been run hard, so thank you for what you've been doing this entire time.
Thank you.
Last one I'd like to introduce is my wife, Rika. That is the better part of me. So she's going to be assessing me and taking points on what I need to fix between now and the ride home. So that's about 45 minutes for me. So just to let you know how my evening's going to go. A little bit about myself. Name is Don King. I grew up in Florida. I'm a Florida resident. Started off living in Panama City as my dad retired from the Air Force, and then moved down to South Florida, Arcadia, DeSoto County. My dad took a job as a highway patrolman for 37 years after that. So I was the son of a state trooper. Interesting story about that is he wrote tickets on the weekends to all my friends. So I had to show up Monday ready to go because my friends were ready to go because they were a little upset. So always a great story to tell when you're the son of a patrol officer. Been in the Army 37 plus years. Been highly successful in my career in the positions that I've taken. Every one of them have been a brass ring step holder to the next position that allowed me to achieve not only the rank of colonel, but a post 06 command colonel working as a theater strategic headquarters with the Special Operations Command Europe. So I've got a lot of experience working as a city manager with Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I know there's that. Well, it was only one time, but it was one time done very well. And if you talk with anybody that was involved with me at that time, I left that place much better than I found it. I left it in better financial status and pockets than when I found it. And I gave them a very good direction to go, and we accomplished a lot of things during my time there. If you talk to the people that I worked with, it was a win-win environment with not only me, but my team. So my team was very, I would say, highly motivated, but more importantly, they were at the point that they were proactive on everything that we were doing. So for me, because we worked so well together, they were reading my mind, and we were executing things faster, more successfully than I would have imagined when I first took the position. So it was a great experience for me, and that's kind of what led me to today, being before you today, is that my time there was very impressionable on what I wanted to do as a future job or a future career after I left the Army. After 37 years, it's kind of hard to think about what you're going to do when you've been in the special operations community for 37 years. But once you get to serve as city manager, garrison commander of an installation, you know where you can provide a lot of good to not only the organization, the facilities, the people, the staff, but also to the residents that live there. And that's why, you know, as I look forward, that's why I've chosen to be a city manager, more specifically for a smaller town, because what my wife and I are looking for is a place where we can homestead, build our home, become part of the community. And for me, it gives me the opportunity to stay involved with the community and make the community better instead of sitting on my back and doing nothing, or being a part of a solution and making the town of Port Richey, you know, increase or improve itself over the years to come. I would foresee myself being here as long as you allow me, and then potentially when you quit allowing me to be the city manager, maybe run for city council. So we'll see how that works out. Other than that, you guys have read my resume. You know that I have also executive positions at the corporate level as a chief of staff, which have a lot of similar roles to a city manager, just with a larger direct reporting staff and with similar budgets, slightly higher than my city budget of $190 million, but a budget of approximately $400 million in different pots of money. So depending on what theater command I was working with, they provided me different pots of money for different allocations. So that was a little bit about myself. More willing to answer more questions if there are any. But thank you, and I look forward to our discussion.
Open up the floor. If you want to start over here this time?
No, you start. Keep the same. I like
Cheat
going
you off.
last.
Go last, okay.
Well, I think so far Tom has opened up to the set number of questions that we all like the answer to. I just think it's a good way.
Okay. Yeah, as long as you don't
But
mind.
thank you for asking.
If it's okay for Tom, with Tom.
I didn't want to play favorites.
I mean,
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll forgo my position in the loop, but I like Tom's open.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be number one.
Always
All
with
of
us.
us.
Colonel, your resume letter says influencing growth. What can you do for City of Port Richey with that?
I think with the city of Port Richey influencing growth, one of the first things I'd like to do is work on the current project that you guys have out there by the waterfront. I think the project that's halfway through the process, I think if we can get that going and get some more movement on that, I think we can start seeing revenue from that hopefully sooner than later. I know we've got an August projected date for completion of that project. I would support the on time, but if I could get it done, you know, sooner than later, that would be one of the things I looked at. I would look at different variety of economic growth opportunities, depending on business types that would be interested in the area. But what I'd want to do is be very careful how I select those incoming businesses or work with the city council, you know, to recommend what businesses to bring in, because what I'd want to do is ensure that we're bringing in the type of business that we want this city to reflect. So we bring in the right business that brings in the right revenue at the right location, so that we maintain not only what we want to be in the future, but what we want to maintain as far as our neighborhood values that we currently have here at Port Richey.
And I have another question. There's two parts to it. As city council, we are elected. And I'm not addressing this council, but historically in the past, residents who are elected feel there's an entitlement that coming on as an elected official, that is an open door to anything and everything within the city, addressing matters themselves as opposed to going through the city manager. My question would be is, how would you address the council with the council's involvement with the city staff? And number two, what guidance would you give the city staff, the managers, directors, if they are approached by a council member?
Well, for me, the type of tool that I like to use is focuses on communication, because I think the big piece of this is communication, where communication lies and how it's funneled and where it should go to. With council members, What I would ask as your city manager is that as you have issues, not only to protect you in some instances based on where you're living, who's asking the question of you, is to work that issue through with me, in which I would work it through with the staff. Because what I'd like to do is be able to, one, protect you on that question and answer, be able to take that information, research it, and I'll probably talk to the city attorney at some point to make sure that we're clean. Because you're going to be one of those people that I will constantly bug to ensure that we're in the legal. Ensure that that information is coming, to me as a funnel. Or I would say to Ashley also, who I would consider my right arm person as far as taking and managing, those information feeds that we get. Because what I want to do is protect the staff in order to allow the staff to work on the priorities they're working on, and then I will make a determination on, hey, where can we fit this in? Is this legal? Is it feasible? And do we have the funding to support it? If it is, it's good, and it doesn't impact our spend plan for the current year of spending. That may be something that we want to do, and I will pass that recommendation up or that answer directly to the council. But I would ask that we kind of use a council to city manager to staff, staff to city manager to staff, because what I find challenging is that when council members go to staff members for specific things, forces them to drop the ball on current projects they're working on. So what I don't want to do is disrupt their tempo on what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. It may be a area of space that I can work on or something that I can accomplish, because it could be a simple solution, but if it's more complex, it allows me to get the right players in the right room, given a shorter period of time to get the response and the answer, and then let them go back to their projects. But what I don't want to do is overburden the staff, and what I don't want to do is create a linkage where I'm missing, probably important guidance and information that's going down to the team that I can't track for you, in order to make sure that in the future, we've got that information logged, that we're able to have those answers immediately, because we've already asked the question and we already know what the answer is. And as your city manager, I would be that focal point of voice to the city council on those responses. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Number two. District number 2. From your resume, you've had a very successful career managing major military installations. I think that goes without saying. I think it's also safe to say that Port Richey is different than a major military installation.
Yes.
At a high level, what do you see as the differences in managing Port Richey versus a major military installation, and how would you address those differences?
I think to be honest with you, I think a lot of the issues and concerns really pair really well with what garrison commanders do, installation commanders do. One of the number one priorities that I always had, that was the top of my list, that I always had to ensure I was funded for, was infrastructure. And I see that being a big, concern with Port Richey's infrastructure, especially the water drainage and the water pipes here that you have in the city that need work because they're relatively old. You do have some that have collapsed, and managing that piece. So infrastructure to me is important. Budget, funding, same. When it comes to regards to budget, while mine was appropriated, approximately $190 million was appropriated to me by Congress. That only did 20% of the work that I needed to do. So I was on the hook for all the extra funding. I had to generate that revenue to bring it back into the installation to be able to accomplish that 80% or what I could do in that fiscal year by going out to partners, stakeholders, associations, organizations, nonprofits, to bring money in to improve not only the situation of the installation through infrastructure, but also through community relations, residents, improving the residents' life and lifestyle on the installation, to include things like recreational parks, because one of the big things I did have a part of was Parks and Recreations was a big part of my portfolio. And that was one of the programs where I had to generate revenue for the employees and for the actual events that we provided, like golf courses, swimming pools, bowling alleys, all the things that were a recreational activity on the installation. I was on the hook for generating the revenue to run it and to pay for the employee salaries that we had for it. In some instances, I had to divest in order to reinvest in other programs so I wouldn't lose money in those programs for my people. And I think that's kind of the same here for the city, is you got to really look at what you're invested in and what you can divest in to bring more revenue in to help, the residents here in the city and address those projects and problems. I think the area where there's definitely differences is like housing. For me, military housing was affordable housing that I was on the hook for maintaining and managing, everything from the cement to the top tile, whereas here, everybody owns their own home. They have their own requirements. They don't have any financial obligations other than the space between the road and the house, the easement areas, depending on where those are. But when it came to more like personal property, we really didn't get involved with that, even though I had a housing manager that managed that. Road construction, I would say, was still the same. I was on the hook for repairing roads every 5 years. So every 5 years, I was working on a stretch of road, $200 million budget to improve that, whereas here, I know you've got the same thing, but with a more limited budget on how you're able to improve those. So I foresee that being, also a concern here in the future as we look at infrastructure and maintaining, the city and the thoroughfares that are here.
So one of the questions that we didn't get to in our personal interview, I'll go give you the opportunity to answer that now. You have a divided council on an important item, or even a council that are all against something that is very important. How do you bring about consensus, or do you just respect the opposition?
Well, my goal and what I'd like to do is, and it's kind of one of the things I really worked on as a commander and as a chief of staff and city manager, is that one of the things I tried to do is build a positive team that can collectively work well together. And I did that through engagement, through communication, and I think communication is kind of the tool for success, communicating, the issues and concerns and how they impact or influence one another. Whereas one council member may have a issue on one thing, another one may be opposed, bring them together, have the discussion why these are. But if they're completely opposed to it, the one thing I'm not going to do is go in there and fight it. But I think communication, getting in there and looking for the win-win attitude from the government, that's what I always used as a term. And when I was working with my directorates, it's like, hey, we're looking for a win-win attitude in order to improve our environment in which we work and live. So how do we do that? Because I had a DPW representative that always told me, no, we can't do that, sir. And I constantly kept him informed with information. I constantly engaged him in a positive manner. And before I knew it, he was giving me solutions to things that he would say no to. That's how I know that I won the conversation, or at least won the process on how to get consensus with the group when it comes to projects that are probably important. Now, projects that aren't, have a lot of weight, I'd have to, I'd kind of leave that with the city to make the decision on that, because if it's, I would say it's kind of like the dredging policy that we have. There's some that are highly for it, some that aren't. So for a city council to agree on that, because I know there's no benefit to some and some benefit to others. But yet it's kind of, if you meet in the middle to invest in that process, it becomes quite expensive, for one side to have it done, and then you're kind of taxing people that don't even have that need on the other side of that project. So something like that, I don't think there could really be a buildup of consensus other than if we found other money. And that's where, if you gave me the task as a council to find other money, I would find other money. And whether it's through grants, whether it's through Corps of Engineers, whether it's through, I don't know. There's a lot of programs that I can look through that I know of. And through your grant manager that I spoke with, she's tracking a lot of the same grants that I've used in the past and the ones that I know that are existing, working for like infrastructure things that are in the city. My only concern is it being private property and the legality of doing anything there with appropriated or city, budgeted monies.
Thank you. Mr. Colombo.
Okay. Colonel?
Sir.
Oh, I hate when people call me sir.
Oh, now you're gonna get it.
Sir. Ma'am. I'm going to kind of take a spin on what Mr. Kinsella brought up. And this is something that many years ago, a mayor, vice mayor, and council members got in trouble for it. And
right.
The state looked into it, and almost ethics committee wound up suspending people.
Right.
He discussed interaction between council members and department heads. This had to do with council members directly interjecting themselves into the work of department people. For instance, in this particular one gentleman's case, who has since passed away, I'll not bring up his name. Some folks may know who he is, but he would literally go onto a job site and tell the building official what to do. Right. I'm not talking about, for instance, I might reach out to the finance director in off hours because there's an agenda item that includes numbers and I'd like to know what a fund balance is or something. I mean, there's not a lot of harm in that. But according to code, our code, we are not allowed to interject ourselves into the work of department head, any staff. I'm not just saying department heads, basically any staff.
Yes.
So how would you approach it if you became aware that a council member was in fact doing that?
Well, I think the best way is to have just a direct conversation with the individual and just kind of remind them of the statute, or at least the I don't think it's in I believe it might be in your constitution that you have. Charlie, okay. Charter. So within your charter, I know it's in there. So what I would do is kind of remind them, hey, based on your charter, this is something that, probably shouldn't be doing. And for your protection, if there's any issues, please let me know and I will go and see and address. But what I don't want is for an elected official to be in a position where they're putting themselves at risk.
And the city.
And the city. And hopefully with the city attorney, we can make sure that we got that policy letter out there saying, hey, please refrain from, or policy letter stating don't, or refrain from doing these specific actions during this time period.
And what would you do with, okay, now this is assuming that this came to your attention by virtue of the grapevine. What would you do essentially if you took the job? What would you do as far as approaching staff and speaking to them about that? Because to my mind, if a staff member is being interfered with in their job by anybody, they should be coming to you.
Well, my policy's always been, to have a staff member that's been spoken to by someone outside of their direct scope of chain of command, especially if it's a council member, to come to me with that issue or concern so that I can reach out to that council member and address the issue.
Okay.
Because what I don't want to do, like I said, is staff's got a lot of things that they're doing. Now we're burdening them with that task. Now they feel compelled to make it their number one task. And now what I've got is a staff member probably working on something that they shouldn't be working on. So I would tell them, hey, come to me, let me resolve the issue. Who's the council member? And then I will go speak with the council member, because hopefully by then I will have built trust with the council and be able to have that just, candid conversation on the situation, and just let them know, hey, I'm here for you. That's my role. If you need anything 24/7, 365 days a week, you got my phone number. You ring it, I'll answer it, or I'll go check on what you've got a concern for.
And I'll ask you a question. I asked you when we spoke, and I've asked the same question of every other candidate. As far as delegating responsibilities and your management style, how do you see your management style? Because I frankly don't want to see somebody that's simply sitting in the office and delegating everything.
Yeah.
Which has been known to happen.
I have a hard time with that. One of the things that the Army does teach you is command and control. To me, that's micromanaging. You're micromanaging your people, which in turn, they don't become as gifted as they should be or as talented as they should be because they're too busy worried about somebody looking over their shoulder. I use a method called mission command, where I get with the directors, I get with them, and I provide them the task or the mission, what we need to get accomplished, and I let them run with it. And then what I do is I have touch points, to discuss that topic so that we can make sure that after you get started, we can sit down and go, okay, so where are you at with this, so that I can make sure that we're in line.
And if you'd let me interject for a moment here, essentially, you're sitting in your office, Sal doing the excellent job he does. Basically, everything comes across your desk. You just sort of pick up the phone and say, Sal, come here, and hand him a piece of paper and say, handle this. So,
some occasions I will. It depends on.
Of course, yeah. Depending on, Sal obviously has responsibilities over certain departments of the city, and that would be the case.
Yeah. And I would work with Sal on that, and that would be a discussion that we have, because there's a thing I call terms of reference that I would like to, present to the direct reports that I have, so that we understand how we're going to play, the city management piece, so that if I'm not there, the right person is the point of contact, or the other person is the point of contact.
Absolutely. Like when you go out of town, you need to delegate.
Yes, I'll have somebody delegated to.
Which you need to do. But again, in our past, not in the current, we actually had, on 2 occasions, assistant city managers, which basically meant we had a city manager just handed everything to the assistant. And I find the fact that, again, in the past, we had assistant city managers in an operation of this size, and the assistant got paid good money.
Yeah.
Got paid good money, was absurd. It was basically, we've got 2 people doing one person's job. This is not that big a house. We have 70, how many employees, Sal?
Just shy of 70.
So just shy of 70. So, I mean, from a management standpoint, obviously not a major military base. And, in my own personal work, I had, 4 managers and close to 70 employees under me. So I was in a similar situation but I did not have an assistant director. It's not like I was a director and an assistant director, and every phone call I gave in, I gave to this. So that's what I'm expecting. I'm not sure that's so much a question that I'm doing now what any attorney will tell me don't do, but I'm giving you a question that's basically a yes answer.
Well, that's a good question. And in my past, I've been very connected with the directors, because what I do have a tendency to do is very, very connected, speak with them, at least weekly, if not more. One of the things you asked about, what do I do? Do I sit behind my desk all day and hide from work? No, absolutely not. I do what I refer to as a walkabout. The old Australian term for, the Aboriginal culture is that I do walkabouts. I walk around, with the staff. I walk to the different, directorates that we have, police department, fire department. And what I'll do is I'm visiting. And it's not, I'm not there to check on your work. I'm there to see you, see how things are going, ask you if you need any help or any assistance. And if not, just make sure that, you're having a positive day. Because to me, that's very important. Because if I walk in somewhere and everybody's having a rough day, we need to change the attitude and figure out how we make the day a little more improved, as opposed to walking into an area where everybody's grumpy because of some issue that was unclear to them that they have no clue how to address or discuss because they're kind of apprehensive to have a discussion with me. And I'm very, I have an open door policy to everybody. Now, I talked with Ashley. It was kind of funny. We were having a discussion. I said, hey, if there may be times that I'll close the door so I can get you the information that you've requested and get that to you in a timely manner. But there'll be times if my door's open and somebody comes in and they make eye contact with me and they came to see me, you got to let them in, because that's part of my deal. If they make eye contact with me, let them in, because why? I'm responsible, to provide them the information that they're looking for.
Right.
So to me, it's important to have those engagements. And I think one of the biggest things for the city, the council, and for the staff is our communication. One of the things that we need to make sure that we sustain, improve on, because I think that's what's going to take us into the future to make this council and mayor, it will turn our tides on anything that is in the negative, and our discussions with the staff, and then our discussions and how we engage with our residents. Because, if you're not engaging with the residents, and I think that's part of my role also, if I'm avoiding their phone calls, I'm not doing service to my job, the city, and to the council. So if people are calling about things, I'm going to answer, and then I'll provide them, hey, here's the feedback or the solution that by law is what we're doing. We can't do it, I'd just be up in front and honest and say, hey, this is something we can't do right now. It's not within our budget, but I'll put your name on a dry erase board and what your issue and concern is, and I'll periodically address it and talk, and you can call me whenever you want to check up on it, and I'll give you another response. But if I avoid them, then I've got 10 more phone calls that day that I didn't answer. So I think it's important to have that communication and not be afraid of that that just adversarial, discussion that's going to occur, because once you pick up the phone, you talk with them, I think that kind of bridges the gap almost immediately, that they know that you're there. And I think that's one of the big things that I, as a city manager, will do is when I'm called, I will answer that phone, and yes, I'm here. How can I help you? Because I believe this position is also about great customer service. Great customer service is very important, to the city residents, and I believe to the city council, that if I'm not providing, we are not providing great customer service, then, we're providing bad customer service, and I probably should be looking for a job elsewhere.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi. I have two questions. The first one is one I asked you in our private conversation, and I wanted to share that with the audience. I'm not a military person, and I share this with you, and my perception of military is, and you're a colonel, is you turn around and you say to somebody, jump, and they say, how high? Not to do it. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. But you shared with me your involvement with the percentage of how many were civilians and the military, and I think that's important for us to know.
Okay. One of the great things is you become a more senior officer. You become more involved with civilian and civilian employees. You're involved with the civilian hiring policies, hiring actions, and also with what we refer to as counseling, and it's not counseling in a negative format, it's counseling in a positive format, so we can determine at the end of the year where we would provide bonuses or time off, or just kind of rewarding our employees for the great jobs they do. So about 2012 is when I started getting into commands and positions where my civilians outnumbered my uniformed soldiers. So my work with civilians has been quite intense. I would say 2012, 2014, 60% of my employees were civilians. And I will say that the civilian HR program is much more strict than the civilian, whereas here you might get away with a little, but there you won't get away with anything because you will be sued faster. You can blink an eye. Somebody will file a complaint on you, and once that complaint's established, you as a commander or a leader are finished. Your job is done if you don't know how to interact with civilians with dignity and respect. And that's what we do, is we treat everybody, our soldiers, our civilians, with dignity and respect. The job that I had as a city manager, 1,500 of my 1,500 body staff, 2% were military uniformed personnel. So all my directors, all my deputies, all my sub-deputies, my deputy city manager, all civilians. And that was one of the big things that I had to manage correctly because, one, I would hold town halls for my civilian employees at work separate from my military so that I had the opportunity to, provide them with awards of recognition and things like that so that they would feel, hey, we're being recognized for all of our hard work. So I always did that in a large fashion. Presented awards to various directorates and directors, every quarter just to make sure that, we were clearly identifying those hard workers that were out there.
Right.
But with that many employees, it was critical for me to ensure that my actions reflected the values of the Army. So that's the one good thing about the Army is the values are very high, and if you treat a civilian employee poorly, then it doesn't end with you getting a slap on the wrist. You lose your job or you lose your command, which means your career is pretty much over. So dealing with civilians has always been I like working with civilians. I am a civilian. So now I get to work with people just like me without that green suit that gets to smelling after 4 days because you wear it every day for a week. But that engagement, learning the rules, taking senior executive courses in civilian management is one of the big things that we take, and it's required annually so that we're in tune with all the laws for our civilians. So as far as my relationships with civilians, I would have to say that, working with civilians has been my career for the last 11 years, for sure. And then before that, I'd have a number of civilians in different areas that I would work with. But if you get the opportunity to read the feedback from my civilian employees, they'll tell you the honest truth about me, and I like that because I've read what they wrote, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize that he thought that way. It's positive, it's great, but I always try to be positive, and I always try to treat them well. And my big thing is to make their day exciting when they come into work because nobody wants to come and work in a bad environment. If the environment's bad, nobody wants to be here. So my job is to keep them motivated, to keep them inspired, make sure they love what they're doing, and then, work hard to ensure that I'm maintaining their high standard of work that they're doing. Because from what I'm tracking, everybody's working hard here to get things done.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
And I thank you for sharing that. I want to make sure that the audience was aware of that.
Yes.
Civilian involvement in your career. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have one more question. You have absolutely been involved in the World Theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
And been very influential in the world, not just the country, but the world. Do you think we're going to be a little bored here?
No.
Okay. I mean, being involved in Iraq and Ukraine and all that, and then coming here to us, you can be a little fiery, but not the same.
I like that.
I got pizza with Bill, then we could get a little hot.
I was going to try to get council consensus to talk about pizza.
No, pizza.
But, we are, I don't know how different it is dealing with a group of third world countries than us.
Well, for me, the levels of reporting that I did and the level of briefs and discussions and engagements that I've had, all the way through all the 4-star generals in the Army. I personally knew them well. still know some of them personally well because the rest of them have retired at this point. As far as world leaders, the highest world leader that I've had to brief and interface and engage with was the NATO Secretary General. So he and I have had a lot of discussions on European engagements and European strategies for the European theater and how to best use their forces. You know, because as of right now, prior to the Ukraine, there really wasn't a lot of interest in supporting anything Ukraine. But that was one of the things that I had to convince them of, is that, hey, this is important to everybody. This supports Article 5. We don't support Article 5. NATO doesn't exist. Russia wins. And then the last piece is, I wish I could remember, the Polish president. He and I have a great relationship. Matter of fact, awarded me a medal in Afghanistan for the work that I did with his senior staff. I basically brought them in, made him my deputy chief of staff, and then took all their elements and put them in operational positions within our NATO headquarters, which was a privilege to them because of the organization that we were. So it kind of gave them a great status. And we find that NATO is our #1 partner in Europe, willing to do anything to defend Article 5 in NATO. So I didn't mean to go up and over the moon and then back down, but what I mean about that is I've worked hard. And it's time for me to enjoy kind of the fruits of my labor. And that's where, you know, if you ask my wife, it's about finding the right place to put our home, where we can live and grow in a community that we will enjoy being in. And this is on our list, because if you look, he'll tell you, all the places I've chose are like this. They're not Clearwater. They're not, you know, other places. I was told, hey, why don't you do Orlando? Why don't you do somewhere like this? It's no. I want to find a place where me and my family will have the time to enjoy our grandkids, a place where I'm part of the community, and a place where I can serve the community in my best capacity, so that everything that's moving forward with the city, that I get to be a part of, because I would feel less valued as a citizen being here if I wasn't, you know, a part of the city management team here and doing what I can for the city and the city. And that's what I would like to do with where I retire, and where I throw my hat down to live. And I've spent 2 months driving up and down the highway here looking at houses, going, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? And on Zillow. So I am committed to this, and I'm talking long term. I'm not talking 3 to 5 years and I'm going to go do something bigger. My goal is, you know, that you get a long-term city manager, someone that you build trust with, someone that you can trust, you know, to work with the city staff, to do those, I call them missions, to do those, you know, goals and objectives that you're looking at, fill your vision and progress, you know, the city forward. And hopefully, as you guys go through the elections and stay or become a part of the bigger community, that I'm that city manager that you remember, that's still pushing along and helping the city go. And hopefully I'm able to establish procedures that I've developed, you know, as a senior Army officer, that I think would work very well with the staff, because it's just small tweaks to make things easier, to be able to make Port Richey what I envision it can be in the future. And I think it could be definitely one of those pearls that people are going to be attracted to, that they're going to be like, how do I get a home there? Nothing's for sale, because nobody wants to sell, because everybody wants to stay here. But then again, I've also got to look at, how do I turn this into a place that will generate revenue to support it? And so I don't find that to be a problem or issue either. When it comes to, I know we've got the grant manager, like I said, she's tracking, and I'm also tracking, because as a city manager that only had 20% of his budget covered, I was forced to go out and scour and hunt the good things. So I was hunting money where I could. So that's where I think I could be of value here, and hopefully I could be the long-term continuity for, the city of Port Richey.
I'll try to make it not boring for you. Do my best.
You said you spent a lot of time driving up. A couple questions for you.
Okay.
Did you use your blinkers?
Use my blinkers. I've just come from Germany, where all Germans use their blinkers and they follow the rules of the highway.
Okay, did you, no, hold on. I got a follow-up here, okay?
He's going somewhere with this.
You know, did you get in a left-hand lane and stay there and keep driving?
No.
That's a great question, Bill.
No.
Because if he answered yes, basically he didn't do either one of those things. You got a lot to learn about being a Floridian.
He grew up in Florida.
I grew up in Florida.
You should know. That's right. Yeah, you should know this.
Panama City.
And the great thing about being in Germany is you find out that trucks can only drive on the right-hand side, and they can only pass with one lane to the left, but they all got to get back in the right lane. If one truck stopped,
Here too, but they don't follow it.
Yeah.
they're all stopped.
Yeah, then we also have the rule here where you can't pass on the right, but they do that. We have this continuous right-hand turn lanes, people that zip up and can get past on the right.
I went to
It's an issue for the chief of police, not for you.
I went to lunch with my wife, and we watched the truck as we stopped for a red light just go right past us through the red light, and I was like, he could have killed somebody going through that intersection.
We have we have red light cameras in our city, right?
You do have them initiated?
Yeah.
In the city, yeah.
Two.
Okay.
We were actually the first city in the state to put them in.
Well, I will say congratulations on that. Because I know most states that I've been in, red lights, running cameras have been disbanded as soon as they went up. North Carolina was real bad about that. A town called Fayetteville. As soon as they put them up, I would say in the first day, 300 run red lights. It went to the city council. Everybody threw up their pitchforks. Cameras came down. So, which I thought was a great idea there because, I've seen too many
We put them up. We put them up. We wrote the ordinance. We made a bunch of money. And then the state figured out how much money we were making, and the state passed a law to where now they get a lion's share of it. But it's still a significant revenue line item for us.
It is a positive line for revenue.
And I can tell you personally, when they first put up those red light cameras, and of course I knew where they were, but it changed my attitude on driving. Instead of yellow means speed up, I learned that yellow means don't cross the line. So it actually
You got to be careful.
had an impact on my driving behavior.
Oh wow.
Okay.
That's all. I'm done sharing
Anyone else?
my life experience.
Mr. King, I want to thank you. We reiterate that we appreciate your interest in the city and you spending your time with us. And we thank you. Good luck. It's going to be a tough decision for us.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I loved the opportunity to come here, and this has been a positive experience. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a break scheduled. Do you guys want to take a quick one?
Not before.
We already took a break.
Yeah, we took one
an early
before,
break,
so
so
I'm good to keep going.
Keep us on back, kind of get us back on schedule here.
Sure. If you don't mind, I'll take a quick 1 minute break.
Yeah, go.
Because I just watered my thing. So.
Oh, hell, I'll take a 1 minute break.
Testing, 1, 2. Oh, that's good. Everybody can hear that. Everybody can hear that. Okay. I know everyone is been short on time and had a lot of yes. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Here, and this guy gotta make good friends in just a few days. You, I feel like watching you once. There.
I just pop in better here and there.
Yeah.
That's all we're on.
That's good. Let me wait.
Thank you, guys. We should do pizza. We get a bunch of people.
Okay.
We're gonna have pizza at the council meeting, and maybe we get a room full.
That's right. I think you increased attendance.
Okay, just wait. All right. You give me the signal. Okay.
Well, they make it hot in here. Not today, but I mean, some of those council meetings are sitting there and it's like,
I spent a lot of time outside there, so. You gotta put me in the cooker.
I run mine anyway, but I still work outside.
Okay.
They kill them for 48 hours. No, I don't. I am willing to teach anyone that wants to come.
Yes.
But that's so expensive, and I gotta go somewhere else today, because I don't have the money for it. Yeah. How'd that go to glory hole?
They're all around like
Do they run 3,000 degrees? Because that's what I need.
Is that electric or?
No, but they run all over.
Gas powered, like natural gas powered. Right, well, yeah, they're not gonna run.
It's gotta be certain on his little map.
Run a gas line.
You know, that's a you training thing, not a dog.
That's my wife's training. That's not my training.
My dog is from 6 o'clock till midnight.
You obviously don't have a pizza.
It's a lot of money.
No, I don't.
They're from Chinese royalty, and they remember their.
No, they don't.
It's like $7 a gallon. It's a lot.
You take the dog and the walk in the stroller?
No, my wife does.
Does that defeat the purpose of the dog having a
Well,
four
no,
legs?
the dog walks for a little while, that's all. He can't walk it. So it goes in the stroller. So they go the rest of the way. After it's complete.
Okay.
The dog doesn't turn around.
It's a big, it's a big dog.
You have a stroller.
Now, when you leave, we're talking about dogs.
I love dogs. I have like 3 dogs.
All right, I'd like to welcome Mr. Christopher Russo. He's the last of our 4 candidates. I want to welcome him. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council and attorney and interim manager. I know that you've talked quite a bit with the other candidates and me and others with regard to some of the bigger issues like the stormwater issues, potable water issues, sewer system. I'm not going to address these because we know we've been talking quite a bit about those. I could hear the discussion out, and we know that. I'm going to be taking a few minutes, and I'm going to try to make it clear, but try to make it fairly quickly because I have my own way of doing things, and this will give you an idea of how I operate. And I think that's important when I'm up here to ask to become the city manager. So first of all, good evening. Good evening, Mayor, council members, interim manager Sal, who just amazing for the background that he has. I've talked to him quite a bit since the last few weeks. And to all attendees here tonight, thank you for this opportunity. I mean, my name is Chris Russo. Everybody knows that. I present myself as a candidate for the city manager position. I could stand here tonight and tell you all about my work history, education, professional accomplishments, but that is not what I'm going to do. People do not hire resumes. People hire people. Instead, my objective is to share with you who I am as a professional and as a leader. Professionally, I see challenges and opportunities. I am constantly showing up when needed, but more so, I show up when not needed. I believe in establishing relationships with residents, business owners, and employees. I find that all very important to be successful. And that doesn't mean just me, it means everybody's reputation who is in this government. How do I do that? I visit senior citizen centers, I visit programs, I visit seniors' homes, I visit children's recreation activities, and I believe that they will one day be our community's future home and business owners, is what our children are going to be at one point. I hold frequently senior department head meetings. That's how I operate. I hold citywide employee town hall meetings at least biannually, keeping them aware by formal communications and addressing rumors as necessary. There's always rumors going around, and I try to nip them in the bud. I ensure residents feel welcome walking into City Hall, as well as calling me or emailing me directly. I'm totally open to that. I would also proactively get involved with the business by participating in, like, the Chamber of Commerce and any other civic organizations that you may have that I'm not aware of. When it comes to my relationship with the City Council, I cannot promise that I can tackle every single project at the same time, especially if there are any financial budgetary restrictions. We know about those. However, I believe I have the professional aptitude to prioritize projects, work with outside providers to identify funding opportunities, transparently communicate the progress of community enhancement projects in the following methods: periodic written reports or one-on-one meetings with our elected officials. And I always say this: communication, communication, and communication. That's very important. Presentations in council meetings and community newsletters. Periodic written reports, like I said, to the council. As a leader, I make tough decisions when I need to, but I prefer to gather as much information and perspectives as possible to make educated decisions. I am respectful, I am considerate, but I am also firm in my expectations for high performance. I could stand here like many senior leaders and tell you that my door is always open. Yes, but I do not wait for people to come to me with problems. I proactively approach my staff asking how they are doing, personally and professionally, and what they need from me to help them be more effective in their roles. And I've seen that work. They do get very more effective. My subordinates have described me as supportive in their professional growth, while simultaneously challenging them to take on new tasks. I am a pro-public safety city manager, police, fire, rescue. I hold all our responders in very high regard, and I look forward to working with the union leaders to ensure our law enforcement feels supported and valued. I would be present at city functions and community events. If selected for this position, I would not try to bring in different staff. On the contrary, I would work with existing staff. I would identify individuals that have the capability of future growth with this city. And I did need to make a tough decision. And if I did need to make a tough decision, I always provide employees multiple opportunities to improve. In closing, I have over 30 years of experience as a city manager. I'm a dedicated and loyal employee. I'm a team-oriented leader who supports and challenges staff. While we should not change things that are not broken, I am a firm believer in identifying room for improvement in processes, procedures, and individuals. I look forward to working with the council and department heads to finish the projects that you started and bring fresh ideas that will continue to make Port Richey the wonderful city that it is. If you select me as your city manager, I will always represent the city with the utmost professionalism and pride. Again, I thank you for this opportunity. Available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Open the floor. I'd like to know how you would handle when a resident is elected as a city official, and once they are elected, historically, and I'm referring historically, there's been occasions that the individual felt this entitlement that they could approach any of the department heads, managers, it didn't matter, and request information or give guidance and so forth. How would you address the council on their involvement if this is occurring? And the second part of it is, what guidance would you give your employees if they were approached by an elected official as such?
Well, I would try to work with, you're saying a elected official that would be going to a resident over an issue?
Correct. If then I'm a guilty one. I've had
today,
and I had the situation where somebody complained about, and I approached that department head, and I was out of line because that was not the purpose. And learning my mistake, I then redirected to the city manager at the time, and they in turn, did what they were supposed to do. Yeah. So the question is, how would you handle where the council individual is going to staff, looking for guidance, giving instructions?
I would very nicely discuss that with the elected official. I would go to the resident and explain how we work, and we've got very diligent elected officials who want to get in there and are only trying to do a good thing for you, for the city, for all our residents. I mean,
it happens a lot of times when that resident approaches the department and looking for whatever the case may be, they get an answer that they're not happy with. So immediately they turn to someone else, the elected official, and say, hey, I'm not getting the cooperation from the city like I should. So hearing just one side of it, the council member going to that department head,
I would go right to their door and knock on it, talk to them, try to explain how things work with them. And if I got to do it 2 or 3 times, if I got to keep an eye on them, I would do it. I would do it. I mean, sooner or later, there's always some people that may never conform, but I can tell you, I've dealt with some really tough senior citizens and different things who had problems. Once you make a little, you get something done for them, it makes a big difference. And I've always tried to do that because I can tell you that in this job, I'm shortchanging myself and the city by not going in trying to help the resident. Usually they're senior citizens or just people that are very difficult, for lack of a better word. Very similar to what we talked about this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
your previous job for Sunny Isles, you experienced a lot of growth for that city. Exponential growth, I would say. Do you think that city of Port Richey is in a similar situation when you started at Sunny Isles? And what would you see as your vision for city of Port Richey to grow both its revenue and grow as a city? What do you see as that vision or that path?
I think, it's, I can't judge how far we can go, but we talked a little bit about this. I think I did mention it with all our elected officials. It's going to take time, but I think you can get these numbers up. I mean, your assessed value, what is it, about 3 billion? Is it something about that? I think
It's not,
we were.
okay.
What are we on the assessed value?
I don't have that.
Okay, I think it's close to 3. I think you're somewhere between, I think, 2 or 3. Maybe our finance director.
She's not here right now.
Okay, she's not here.
We always need her for numbers.
But we do have a very good finance director, but she's very good someplace else.
I know that. I think it's 2 or 3 billion. You're never going to get to the 18 or 19. We started with a small number in Sunny Isles Beach. Now we're up to $18 billion in assessed value, and a huge fund balance. Not that you're ever going to get there, but there is no reason not to improve, reduce millage rate, increase fund balances at the end of the year. That is doable. That is doable. And I think I mentioned it to every one of our elected officials today, mentioning, the concept of let's get in there, let's see what the community wants, how far they'd want to go, and we bring in the developers and we start working on it. I mean, this is something that was one of my expertises in Sunny Isles Beach. We had the ability to kind of go pretty far, put it that way. But you need we can do. There's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can do. You have to see what can be done and what can be done sooner than later to bring out more revenues. It's not easy. It's not easy.
So I'm going to ask you maybe 1 or 2 questions from what we talked about earlier, but I want you to share that also with the public. So the one was, as far as Port Richey, obviously you've managed in Florida, you've been in big metropolitan areas from a New York area. Why Port Richey? Small town, 2.7 square miles, 3,500 plus residents or so. Why Port Richey?
But it's funny. It was a little. The last word you said was a little.
Yeah, it's our side. We're very small, very.
Yes.
As compared. So what's your interest in our little city? Why do you want to be a manager here?
What's my what?
Why are you interested here in Port Richey? What interests you the most about our city? Why you want to be the city?
I think we got. I think we've got the ability. I don't know how. I don't know how much we can, I don't know what we can do, and I can't hear you too well.
It's our sound system.
Something with the sound. Oh, it's definitely with the sound system. It's something with the sound system. I couldn't make it all out.
I've heard that before.
It's a common problem.
He's asking why Port Richey.
Problem before.
Yeah,
Chris, he's asking why Port Richey.
Why
Port Richey? Why do you want to come to Port Richey?
Oh, because a few reasons. One, it's got the features that I want. You've got the right retirement system. You've got I like the group of elected officials, and I love the fact that I've had the chance to sit down with all of you, and your staff. Got a very good staff. I've had a lot of staffs through the years. These people are good. Yep. These people are good. I was on the phone with him for an hour trying to learn some stuff. I think he got it through my thick head eventually.
By the way, if you don't
bottom line,
if you don't wind up here and you wind up in another city, you cannot steal sound.
That's a good point.
We will not let you do it. We'll sue you.
Okay.
Proprietary.
Always open options.
We're gonna have a talk later.
That's good.
No.
And as follow on to that,
Good. You know,
Popular guy in the room, let's just put it that way.
but he's done a good job.
Yes.
he does get all the kudos. I gotta have.
I can,
And a follow up to that, so, and where do you, so as the leader of Port Richey, where do you see the city 3 to 5 years from now under your leadership?
be where?
Where do you see the Port Richey in 3 to 5 years under your leadership?
Oh, I expect to have a better fund balance, get the millage rate down somewhat. I don't mean big numbers, but those would be the first two things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I really want to get a hold of any and all developers in this area, especially if there is such thing as ones that are really connected to the city, that, you know, want to see it prosper, you know. Sometimes you don't have developers like that. They're just, some of them are just looking for their dollar and don't care about anything else. Most of them don't care about anything else, but there are a few. There are a few that do. And I would want to work with them too, and bring in some other ones. That would be, but that would be what I'd want to do. I want to get your fund balance up, hopefully get the millage rate at least stable or down, depending. Obviously, that means the sooner the better that some of these projects can get up. They're not huge projects, they're not monsters, but they need to be done. And we can start looking at all the areas. As I think I mentioned that to I think everybody, or most. I would look at all the properties in the city. I mean, I would do an inventory of it and the condition of them, and start figuring out where can we get more revenue.
Yep. Great plan.
I said I'm big on revenue.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, we're all big on revenue. Unfortunately, it's not as easy to get your hands on as one might think. And I love the thought of more revenue and lower millage rate. I don't see that happening anytime soon. We've got some residential projects that are in various stages of development. I have been hearing that for a while, and I probably will probably continue to hear that for a while. As the mayor pointed out, we're 2.4 square miles.
2.7 square miles.
2.7 square miles. We don't have a lot of real estate. We do not have a big industrial area. There is some area on the east side that could be turned into commercial, which is generally more revenue producing than residential, simply because they do pay taxes, and you know, if it's not entertainment venues but actual businesses, manufacturing or whatever, they bring in revenue, and they're not a big demand on city service. But there's just not a heck of a lot of room here. Now, you know, understand Port Richey has been essentially a quick history. 1924, Newport Richey was incorporated. Very quickly thereafter, 1925, Port Richey was incorporated because they didn't want to be part of Newport Richey's dreams of business and stardom and putting up a hotel and being the Hollywood of the South. And at which point the economy crashed in the 20s and Newport Richey went broke. So for many years up until recently, Port Richey has basically been a residential community, and that's all it's been. We have limited resources as far as water goes. We own our own water system. Everybody else around here belongs to U.S. Water. We have our own water system, and it's used for irrigation. We tried to put in reclaimed water at one time, and that was approved by council, and the subsequent council killed it. We had a grant to do it. So we're dumping millions of gallons of potable water onto irrigation. Which makes me question large-scale housing developments, when I just don't know how much water those wells could put out. Sal probably has an idea more than I do, but I do remember at one time, you know, since I've been here, which is around 20 years, that basically we started pumping brown water. because we're at the end of a prolonged drought. So I'm not sure of the potential for revenue growth around here.
Well, we got to work on it. I mean, it is possible.
Right.
But, I mean, when I got to Rybrook, the drugs, the prostitution, the street crime, people laughed when we said we were going to clean that up, and we were going to turn it into a high-rise, very expensive. People laughed. People laughed. We did it. We're not building 60. I'm not talking about 60-story
right
here, but I think we can do. I think we can do better. I think we can. I think you can get some more revenue. May help bring the millage down. That was our biggest thing early on, and I remembered like it was yesterday. And we finally did it, where we were able to get the millage rate down and keep bringing it down. The mayor was more concerned with bringing that millage down than having more money, more fund balance and stuff. Why? Obvious. The residents want the millage rate down, period.
Well, and understand something, the residents around here are no different than anywhere else.
Yeah.
And this year, by virtue of a county referendum that was passed last year, the school board is putting a full 1 mil tax onto our taxes this year. So even though the county has not raised their millage rate, even though we raised our millage rate fractionally, I mean, a minute amount, everybody's getting a 1 mil increase.
Yeah.
Just because of that school referendum. They got the opportunity to use up to a mill, and they took the whole mill, which we all knew they were going to do. So they've already got a tax increase. There's no appetite for tax increases. As you know, assessed values have gone up, so people's taxes are going to go up anyway, especially those who have recently bought their homes and the values reset. Grandfathered people, especially on the north side, which is where a lot of your most valuable properties are, a lot of those houses have been flipped. So, they were, homesteaded in, and you can only go up, as you well know, 3% or the CPI or whatever. Well, those took a jump, but, that's going to get you just so far. And we're hoping for additional growth next year from a city standpoint, but we have no idea what he was knowing.
No, but we can.
Property insurance issues we have in the state, and with the mortgage interest rates going up, there's no guarantee that this, is not another real estate bubble, or even if it's not a bubble, it hasn't kind of peaked out and it's not going to keep going up. And, current council has been in a fortunate position, and council before, since about 2016. And I was on council from 2009, until 2016, where we had to fight just to keep the doors open and the lights on. And councils subsequent to that have had the benefit of every single year revenue, ad valorem revenue going up. And it's gotten addicted to that. It's used to that. And I'm fearful because I lived through it for last time. I spent the majority of my time on council. In 2011, we were under the threat of a state of financial emergency from the Auditor General's office, because we basically had no fund balance. I mean, things were crazy, and I don't want to get back there. So, but all I'm saying is, I don't see massive chances for revenue increase. So,
well,
opinion, I respect yours, and I respect what you've done, but I've had several questions I've asked the other folks, but you've answered those questions to a specific degree, to a certain degree in your opening statement. So I don't really need to drive on that, other than expanding once again on what Councilman Kinsella said, was that from my theoretical is, and the city got in trouble for this a long time ago, many councils ago, nobody up here got in trouble because we had a council member who, when the building official was out at doing a building inspection or for whatever, and this particular council member would go there while the building official was there and intercede on their behalf. Now, that is specifically against our code, our charter. What would you do in that instance? What would be your policy with staff members if something like that happened?
Well, I would give them a shot. I would deal with the individual and see if it happens again, and how, that's, I mean, if the person doesn't have a history of issues like that, I mean, I don't know.
Specifically, your job, city manager.
Yep.
We hire two people. We hire you. We hire the city attorney. The thumbs up person over there. Thumbs up,
two thumbs and
up
sit here.
You just answered that question for me. I'm going to go right to the city attorney.
and a plus.
Figure it out.
A plus for that answer.
I always do, and I don't know.
We're essentially the board of directors here, and you're the chief executive officer, and it's on our job to wander the lower floors and look over people's shoulders and tell them how to do their job. And I need a city manager personally that I can trust to not allow that to happen.
I let them do their job, and if they're doing it wrong, I'll talk to them. But I always give people a chance, all right, to work with them on things. I mean, I've always done that. Always done that.
Thank you.
So I just tried to make this a little simpler than maybe some of the other discussions that you had in here this evening.
I had one follow-up that we've talked about is the millage rate, decreasing the millage rate. Of course, we would all like to decrease the millage rate, including myself.
Yeah.
And you've talked about how would you do that in an environment now where everything is doubled in price for everything? I mean, we need to buy equipment. Equipment just gas is doubled. Everything is doubled. So, and I'm all for decreasing millage rate because I pay millage rate too. So I'm in for it.
Yeah.
But realistically, how could you accomplish that in a small? We don't have a lot of resources. So how could you? And this might be an unfair question. So
there was a time when we, meaning Canal Beach, had the same problem. What we did until they were building the high rises, and once they get on, it's a lot. But what we did was, as went up, and in your case, it might be just renovation, it might be some newer condos or small apartments or whatever it is. Values going to go up. There's going to be a time like you had this year. We had to we couldn't take down the millage rate. We took some of it for the code officer. We added. Let's just assume there's a project we're pushing on to get done. It's a 12-unit small condo building. That's coming on. Okay. See how much funds come out of that to help with making the excess funds. Maybe it's got to get spent on something. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe one year you got it where your millage rate down a little bit this year. We'll do that.
Right.
We'll do that. The next year, maybe we can't. We did that back and forth. Now, it's not the same, I know. I mean, we were building these high rises, but I still, after driving around with Sal, I mean, there's just areas, everything has to be inventoried. Every piece of property and land, and building on it, and what's there, and what we might want there after doing a plan on that. I mean, it can go up and down, but eventually, hopefully down some. I think it's doable. I mean, I think it's doable.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Any questions? No more questions.
Well, Mr. Russo, I want to thank you for coming out, and I want to reiterate that we appreciate your interest in the city and the position, and I wish you luck. We got a tough decision to make. All 4 candidates, fantastic candidates, and obviously thank Basic's firm. You guys provided.
Actually, I'm angry at him. He brought us 4 candidates. I had a hard time.
Sorry.
Should have made it. But you did.
20?
4.
Okay.
Well, there were more, but they only picked 5.
No, you guys did an excellent job. 4 great candidates, and I want to thank you again, Mr. Russo, for your interest. Thank you.
Am I dismissed?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.
And I can tell you, you're all a really nice group of people.
Appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Not really.
I don't think they are.
Not really. I'm not.
This was the first time that I got a chance to talk to everybody.
Well, good.
That's great.
And the staff I had talked to, but I'm really impressed myself. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So now we got a scheduled break, and we'll come back to public comment and decisions. Would you guys want to move right into that? You want to take a break?
I think we need a break for some reason, don't we? Just for a couple minutes at least? I thought, no? Okay.
No, my point was just whenever this starts, to make sure we take that moment and have public comment.
Oh, okay.
So we wanted a break to just break it up. So if we needed one, but we just did.
We can actually, would you guys rather take a break than have public comment, or go ahead and have public comment now, take a break, and then we come back for a decision?
I'm online till 12 p.m. I'm done.
I am. I'm with you on that one, brother. Been a long day.
Well, we're good. You want good? You guys okay with public comment now?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Well, like fresh. Well, yeah, so if anybody like to speak, raise your hand. Start with Mr. Mueller.
Can you raise your hand?
He's good.
That gives me opportunity to organize my 4 pages of notes.
Welcome, Cindy.
You only get 1 minute.
446 Blue Point Drive. I think we have at least some choice of some really good candidates, so I think that's really great. I think if we had pizza, during city council meeting, we might have more attendance and more people active.
See what I'm saying here?
Thin crust, and actually what I was going to say as a member of CAC, whoever we do elect or decide on, I think next week is too soon, but we do have another one coming up in October of Meet Your Neighbor that they should attend absolutely, and we can introduce them to the community.
Absolutely. Great idea. Thank you, Cindy. Yes? Mr. Mueller, welcome.
Thank you. Dave Mueller, 5439.
Did you get Devin's dress memo? Oh,
Good color. He has a fish going through the water. He has a fish.
Blue Point Drive, 5439.
Blue Point Drive, yes.
I'm sorry.
Are you in Port Richie?
Was that Blue Point Drive?
6, 8.
It's been a long day.
What was yours?
Basically, we got 4 qualified candidates. I can't believe the difference that 2 years makes from the last time to this time. We had 1 candidate and 1 acting that polluted the field, and I think we learned our lesson there. So that was all good. In fact, there was even somebody that mentioned that. I took 4 pages of notes. Here are the points that I found. There again, this is going to be your job. I'm just kind of pointing out some obvious things. Matt Koppler, 30 years experience, 60K population, cities, all good numbers there. He returns calls. That's a good. We're looking for that. We want direct interaction, no direct interaction with the department heads, and that was echoed through all of them. So they all pretty much hit that. On the agenda, he liked to research and support. He doesn't want half-baked ideas, and neither do I. He likes to fix problems. He's got experience with roads, water, sewer, and canals. He likes working with the council on a vision, which we lack here, and we really need one. I think Devin indicated that in the town hall, and everybody seemed to be real receptive to that. I like to see that moving forward. He also likes partnering with federal, state governments and looking into growth through annexation. He's the only one that really captured that. Mark Rooney, great skill set. He's got extensive grant experience, which I think that'll be a real plus here. He mentioned a succession plan. That's really good too. We need to understand that people aren't in the position forever. You have to have the ability to act when people leave, like our patented Sal.
Proprietary.
Right.
Well, I patented it. Now it's even better.
Than you. It's a great motion.
Let's see. I liked Mark's review of the potentially selling bonds. I did some quick math on 10 mil. That's roughly around 350 annual debt service, which isn't a lot. That's like what we did for our employees this time. So 10 mil could go a long ways to doing a lot of projects here. So I think we need to give that some consideration. He also emphasized creating special service areas for, can I have some more time?
You can, yeah. This is an important decision, so if you got.
We got a big crowd.
Yeah, go ahead.
Get some.
2 more minutes. Let's do 5 minutes if they need.
He did mention special service areas for canals, and if that need be, that needs to be voted upon, but that could be a situation that we could address as well. I like those ideas. Don King, really liked him too. Like I said, you guys are going to have a tough choice here. He likes influencing growth in the waterfront, bring in the right businesses in that area, strong on communication. When asked about working with staff, he wants to work through this, people to work through the city manager. Like the last one wanted, which was good, but then you have to have the follow-up skills to return calls and get the work done. Never happened. So that was a short side there. Worked at the infrastructure, pipes, drains, and everything, familiar with that. Some strong points. Ability to generate other funding with his 80% shortfall on his budget. I thought that was a challenge, and it sounds like he's not opposed to challenge. He indicated that communications was the tool for success, and I certainly agree with that. Dredging he mentioned that dredging was an expensive process, but the ability to find funds and clean up the runoff was possibly the key to that. I like that idea. He also mentioned about desktop procedures, and I don't know whether everybody has those here, but that would lend to the succession plan. We're getting some good ideas. Whoever takes over, these are all things that ought to be in our vision, that if one person leaves, you have a procedure, desktop procedure to address how to run that particular job, and cross-training and everything else. So I think he understands that aspect, and I think that's all good. And he's also familiar with generating revenue through grants. Last but not least, Chris Russo. Let's see. Had some real success with his previous job generating better fund balance, keeping the millage rate down or flat. He wants to be connected to the development, and I think this city has some areas that we can look at. He's big on revenue growth, and the fact that he cleaned up drugs and prostitution, which is a problem in our area as well, that could be a benefit as well. He also mentioned some ideas about inventorying all of our assets. I think this is a personal effort that really needs to go through and see what we really have here and then make the hard decision that says, do we need to keep doing this, this, and this? So, like I said, I don't want to put one of these ahead of the others. I think they're all qualified candidates. I'd like to see one of these get hired. Thank you.
Thank you.
So would we.
Really, that really cleared things up.
Yeah.
Devin's book.
5414 Bay Boulevard. What was really interesting to me is
Yeah, sorry, honey.
one of my my first candidate was Russo after reading the resume. And it's just like, it's just, that's why these in-person things are just so important. But, in person, it's, thank God he's not here. It's like, in person, it's like not even a viable candidate. The guy won't even look you in the face, you know what I mean? And you're, it's like, I don't know, sketchy character. But that's just my opinion. I think Koppler is probably the safest choice. He's like a well-rounded guy. He's well-spoken. He seems like he's going to be accountable, and he's really going to do the job. It's, and we need accountability. We have a lot of great people in the city, but, some of the stuff is only being done like 80%. Without the 20%, things just aren't getting done, like the waterfront districts, even some of the financial reports. Dave's, trying to work on that, try to help her a little bit to, make that a little more legible for, the layman's term, layman's like me. I think we'll get the most value out of Don King, because he's such a diligent, hard-charging guy. Will he ruffle some people's feathers and stuff like that? Yeah, I think so. I really think so. But I think he's going to work harder than everybody else, than all the other candidates. So you're getting more for what you're paying for. It's obviously a big adjustment from what we were used to. But I think Koppler and King are probably the two candidates that really make the most sense. I just feel that way in my gut, and that's what leads me through life mostly, and it's taken me okay so far. Rooney's also potentially a good candidate as well, and I think they really actually did do a good job on finding these folks. But I think thank you for that, by the way. But I think that he's maybe more of like a John Dute or something like that, and maybe not as much, hustling and bustling and getting things done. I don't think we're going to get our money's worth. I think our main money's worth the most, I think, out of Don King. But again, that's like hard charger type stuff. So it's a whole different, ball game. Really got to think about that. Do we want, like the wild card candidate that's going to get a lot done, break a couple dishes in the china shop? That's my overview. But I think we need some of that. And he seems overqualified, to be honest with you. But I think he's got a lovely wife. He makes a good sale of him kind of planting his flag here in the city. And maybe we could really rely on this person, because I feel like he's one of these guys that really don't retire, keep kind of working. And I think we could really use him to our advantage. And I think that's like the main thing. We want these people to work for us, and that's what we want. So I think we can get the most out of Don King, out of everybody. But if we can't have Don King, maybe I think Matthew Koppler is his full name. Really nice guy, and I like that he studied, the city council, meetings and things like that. He knew about like reclamite. Guy was sharp. My only thing about him though is and it's just like John Dute, where I was harping on the Kansas thing, is these guys, I really like him actually, but he's from Ohio, I'm from Ohio, it's like, I don't know, we hit on some things that really made sense, got good vibes from him, but they're not from Florida, and they really don't, they don't own boats, they don't really, it's not their wheelhouse. So anyways, these are just little tidbits, but they matter. So thank you and good luck. It's not my decision.
Thanks, Evan. Good luck, guys. King might bring in a gun. I said King might bring in a gunboat.
Yeah, he's an impressive guy.
Yeah.
That's a bull in the china shop.
With the 50mm removed, but still.
Anyone else from the public like to speak?
I think that is awful.
There's a couple staff back there. Okay, with that, you guys.
Just because he's wearing black doesn't mean he's part of the bubble.
So I asked this because that's the only thing left on the agenda is the break, obviously, and then coming back and for a vote. Do you guys feel like we can get that decision made tonight, or do you want to put it off?
I say we should open it up for discussion.
I think we should at least go for discussion and see where we go from here, and then make that decision whether or not we decide tonight or a future night.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, Sal, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just to reiterate what I've explained to council before, we have ballots prepared if we wanted to do it the same process, like we took down like from the 9 down to the 4.
Yeah.
We can do that tonight after you do a discussion. But we've also slotted Tuesday the 19th if we want to enact a special meeting by consensus. We can put that into motion. I know we've been at it since 8:30 this morning, so I leave it up to you which way to proceed.
My take on it is, I think we should do it is pass up the ballots and before discussion, just put a vote out there, see where we're at, and come back. All 4 of us agree on the same one, and it makes it easy. And then if we have a couple, we can talk about it.
Do you have the ballots 1, 2, 3, 4, or what's your?
Just like last time.
Just
And
like
then
last
we get
time.
across
Check
one and see
one.
what you guys are.
Pick top, just one?
Oh.
That's what I'm saying, do you want to do one?
Yeah, I would say just check one to see where we're at. But Colin,
Normally, what we recommend is that you check 2, and then just see if there's 2 that kind of rise to the top,
okay too.
and then you can discuss those 2.
Okay.
And you don't need to discuss the ones that didn't get any votes.
That's a good idea, I like
Well,
that idea.
very few
So
items.
why don't we do the ballots now
Right.
to see where we fall?
Sure. The only thing with I was expected to in this scenario, say that both of those got all 4.
Well, look, if all
Then we vote again to see where we're at on one, maybe.
you really have to vote twice if you're going to make a decision today, because it could be that one of those candidates had 5 votes and one had 4, but the one with 5 votes were all second place votes, and the one with 4 votes were all first place votes. Because all I'm asking you to do is put a check mark. I'm not asking you to rank.
Yeah, so
And then maybe we could take our break so
Is that what you said, Cal?
just a check mark.
Yeah, okay, that's fine, that's, I
And then
just,
maybe we could take our break while,
it doesn't take her long to do it.
Take our
If you need to take a break, so.
while we count.
I'm honestly, I'm hoping that we can make a decision tonight, which would help Colin to move forward.
I'd like to have these guys have an answer as soon as
Yes,
possible.
I think the longer we put it on, we may lose
You may.
a top candidate.
Hopefully we can get close tonight is my
Yes.
overall. If not selected completely. Because I have a very angry Pekingese. He's getting angrier. I have to deal with this.
He has to reupholster the little doggy cart.
He wants his ride.
6 o'clock.
Oh, he's getting angry. 5:30.
You gotta
That's
go
it.
from daisies to
He knows
sunflowers.
it's 6. It's like 5:55. He comes out.
He knows it's 5. He knows it's 5 o'clock. He knows it's 8:30 at
I'll
night.
be
He
right
knows
back.
it's 12 noon, and he knows it's 6 a.m.
My dogs have no idea of time.
Oh. I'm dealing with royalty. I don't know what to tell you. He'll actually bark at me. If I'm late, he'll come walking up, sit down, and start barking.
So now that I know that works,
I thought you were barking.
when you start talking, I'm just gonna start barking. And then you'll wheel me out of here.
Oh, okay, good. Sometimes I can't see. So. All right.
That's a bad habit.
So by majority, the top with all 5 is Don King, then Matt Koppler with 4, and Mark Rooney with 1.
Very close.
So to me, it's down to Mr. King and Mr. Koppler.
Yeah. So should we vote again and then have discussion, or you want to have discussion on those two?
I think we should have discussion. I think,
Sure.
my person, I would like to hear other people's opinions.
Yeah.
Well, I'll open up that discussion. Or you want to take a break before discussion?
It's up to you guys.
Let's keep rolling.
Keep rolling?
Let's
Good.
let's keep rolling. The Pekingese is getting angrier. Go ahead,
go
Tom.
first.
Again, my top two were Mr. Koppler and Mr. King. One of the things I really enjoyed talking to Mr. Koppler is engagement. What really impressed me is having the opportunity, as I'm talking to him, he is looking at me straight in the eyes with, my background. That meant a lot to me. I mean, we did a lot of discussion, same way with the Colonel. We got two great candidates. My only drawback with Mr. Koppler, and I'm just going to have to share this, he's not a bourbon drinker, so that kind of. But honestly, either one, I thought they were phenomenal. I was very,
Not
very.
helpful, Tom.
Okay, flip up a coin.
It's only the city.
No, I don't think we could go wrong either direction. And
I totally agree.
my concern with the Colonel is coming from a military environment and coming to a very small community. And I question him quite a bit on how do you handle your staff? Again, when you tell one of your department heads you want something done, they do it to your liking. Coming to a smaller community, you're not going to have that. The work is going to be done, but may not be as precise as your expectation is because it's the civilian life, not the military life. So it's a different breed. So that's my only drawback with Mr. King is that transition from the military role to civilian. He did share with me how, as he did, that a good 80% of his staff were civilian staff. So he kind of answered that away for me, which made me feel better. So, Mr. King, Mr. Koppler are my two top.
I look at this as a marriage. No, in a nice way. We're arranging. I'm still not hugging you. It's actually, though, a marriage between us and the city manager, sitting up here. It's between the staff and the city manager, and it's between the residents and the city manager. And on top of that, I'm also looking for duration because I don't ever want to have to do this again.
I was going to say the same
So
thing.
that's why I picked Mr. Koppler and Mr. King. I think they will all be here for a long time, have the intent to be here for a long time, within the foreseeable long time, I'll say. I think both of them would have good interaction with the staff overall. Mr. King's used to working with civilian staff. I think he may be rough around the edges with staff and may be pushing, but he's also used to dealing with civilian staff. So I think he knows enough to dial it back as the case may be where needed and build consensus. Dealing with us, well, they're both on their own with that. But I think
As are we all.
Mr. Koppler is more used to dealing with a city council. Mr. King really isn't at the end of the day. He has generals that he deals with, and he has leadership that he deals with,
And Polish presidents.
and Polish presidents. But he doesn't have an elected staff that, although his leadership may go in different directions, it's still a little bit of a different dynamic. Where Mr. Koppler is more used to that. And probably the last one is the residents themselves. Mr. King, in all of his city, military installations, the residents kind of have to be there. It's their job to be there. They're not allowed to leave in most cases. The strategic vision of the base is what the government and the superiors tell them is the strategic of the base.
You can throw people in the brig too.
And he can throw people in the brig. He's not used to dealing with residents as much that have individual properties, have their own needs, have their own desires, have their own complaints, want to know why the city isn't fixing their storm drainage all the way through. Dealing with code administration because military installations are essentially immune from code. There's a lot of aspects of dealing with residents that Mr. King is not necessarily, he may be familiar with, but he doesn't have experience with between a military installation and a city. Whereas Mr. Koppler is used to that because that is his background. Again, I agree. I think either one of them could do the job, but to me, it's that marriage is that best fit with all three parties, and then the longevity. I think Mr. King can definitely deal with us. I'm pretty sure he could deal with us.
If he brings pizza.
If he brings pizza and ice cream, then he's got one, no problem.
No, it's thin crust. We're good.
I think obviously, I think dealing with staff, he would be able to accommodate. It's just not to the same. The marriage may not be as great to me with Mr. King as it would be with Mr. Koppler. Not that Mr. King can't do it. So to that end, I would be leaning towards Mr. Koppler first, and that's really the way I checked him. Mr. Koppler first, Mr. King second. And I don't think we could necessarily go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking for the better, the best fit overall. And I think that's it.
Well, I was the one that didn't pick Koppler, and it wasn't because I didn't like him. It was a toss-up between him and Rooney, and I picked Rooney. Of course, I picked the general, or the colonel, I should say, just like everybody else. But I like Koppler a lot. It was really one of those, I don't know what the heck I'm going to check. I kind of agree with the consensus so far that given the choice between the two, I like Mr. King a lot. I think he's got some amazing skills, and I think there's a lot he could bring to the city. And there's a lot of things he could do for the city that nobody else could because of his strength of military background. But that every plus has a minus, and there's a trade-off there. In discussion, listening to the several of you, or the two of you so far, I would probably go Koppler over King also. Just as I got to tell you, from the get-go, I was on him. I mean, before we even did all the interviews and stuff. I was a little chagrined, and I guess I shouldn't say I should be, because he gave a rather soft response to council interference in city business. And it's not really fair to hold that against him, because I should have pressed him on that further. I just kind of let that ride. And that's why I kind of rolled off of him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I got to say, given the two, and again, we all picked Don King. Don King. Every one of us did. So I mean, we saw some value there. So if we could merge them, that would be cool. But we can't. We got to decide. And I do see a lot in Mr. King's skill set, a lot in his toolkit. But his life experience, and again, we all had this issue, I mean, when you're a full bird, you're not even a lieutenant colonel, you're the full colonel. That's one step below a general, that's way up there, The command he had, who he worked for, the command that he finally worked for, again, got a Polish, president from a medal from the president of Poland. That is extremely admirable stuff. I mean, the guy's
Very impressive. Absolutely impressive.
But given everything he can bring to the city, who's the closest to the full package, I guess is the way I can put it. And I'm not sure that he is. So I'm leaning Koppler at this point, even though I didn't pick him on this last roundabout.
You're allowed to change your mind.
Well, again, I wanted to be upfront. Everybody else picked Koppler. I didn't.
It's okay.
Yeah, but it
We'll
was,
forgive you.
it was,
I'll give you the hug.
it was kind of,
That relieves me of one.
yeah, he didn't tell me when. Sometimes, when I leave office, have a hug, here's your hat, with your hurries, there's the door.
Councilwoman Rodriguez.
I agree with everything that's said. I initially was very leery of Mr. King, only because it was all military background and no civilian background on paper. He had a great 1 to 90-day plan that I really liked, that I noted. But my concern was the all military and how he would interact with our staff and our residents who are not military. But he certainly alleviated those fears for me when I spoke with him, and that's why the first question was, 98% of his staff were civilian, and that alleviated a lot of my fears with him in that respect.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You're going to go sit over there next
That
time.
might have been his last.
No, he's not. He's over there.
That might have been his last posting. That doesn't necessarily mean it's
I know it's not his entire career,
Okay,
but my concern was, because I'm not a military person, my concern was he only dealt with military, and that alleviated my concern as a civilian. I've never been in the military, so I didn't know that. So that helped me a lot. And then listening to him here, he loosened up a lot more and became less of a military guy and more of a civilian. And I like that. I like the fact, although Colin has done a great job and I appreciate all he's done, I choose to not look at him anymore. I want a city manager who's going to be here for 10, 15 years, and that's going to not only start a project, pick up the middle of the projects that we're in, but finish the projects. I want someone here for longevity. Both Koppler and King are here for the long haul. I absolutely believe that. But listening to what you said, Todd, I'm leaning more towards Koppler because we do have an all-civilian type thing, and he is used to dealing with that. And you were right in that respect. I don't think we can go wrong with either candidate. Absolutely. Both candidates, hands down, all four of them were very good. But a lot of the things that Matt said, I mean, first thing when he sat down, he said, these are the issues Port Richey has, and he started listing them for me. And I'm like, well, I like that because I want to get things done. And I liked that not all roses and lollipops. We have projects that you have projects, Port Richey, that we need to get done, and I like that. So both of them are great candidates, but I think I'm leaning towards Koppler as well.
My comments, and totally on board with everybody here. Like I said, Koppler and King, two outstanding candidates. Relatively the same, some slight differences. I will tell you during the process, in the 3 phases that I went through, obviously the resumes on paper, I had a list of 1 through 4, what I kind of thought how it would fall out. I get here for the social thing with the staff, 3:30 yesterday, and I derive a different list from that. Just be meeting and socializing with them. And then the in-depth personal interviews with each of them, again, my list changed. I will say that Don King was at the top of that list all 3 times. And Mr. Koppler, he continually moved up in that list. So that now we get to 2 are equal in my opinion. The one thing that I want to credit Mr. King with, and I think a lot of concern is around his experience, and that's valuable, right? He's looking for a community to be a part of. It's not just a job to him. This wants to be his home, and I think that's that really weighs heavy in a decision that we make, because that's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that's going to do the job and be able to and be a part of the community. And he's all in, his wife's all in, and so that's really nice. However, as also part of my process, I don't want to make a decision, at least my vote, in a vacuum. And so I've talked to several staff members to get their opinion, and I've also talked to several residents to get their opinion as they interacted with the candidates. And based on that collective process involving all those different entities, the feeling I got was that, not the feeling, but the data, just the raw data, is that Mr. Koppler rose to the top. Again, two solid candidates, and I think Mr. Koppler, and I'll share this. When I first met him in the social event, we had a great conversation. Matter of fact, I probably talked to him the most, just because he was the second one I kind of got hooked up with. But he seemed a little maybe nervous. Maybe it was what's the word I'm looking for? He's nervous, I guess. But as you talk to him, he became more comfortable. And you see that, and that carried through into the interviews today. Much, and that's why he continued to rise in my list. And like I said, as I took that to the staff and to the residents that I knew were involved, he was by far the choice of the collective, and I think that's important. So my support obviously would be behind Mr. Koppler, and I hate that for Mr. King, because, like I said, he's a fantastic candidate.
Absolutely.
And
we couldn't go wrong either way, to be honest with you.
To me, the gap between first and second is minute.
Yeah, I'd hire them both, believe it, if they call one manager and another assistant manager, but can't do that, obviously. So
Co-managers.
would love to have both of them on staff.
They split the salary.
No,
If you want me to go, I mean, I said.
No, that's all.
Sal, you're proprietary.
Sal, you were the most popular person in this room tonight, and you can't vote.
He won't be able to get out because his head's going to be so big.
Yeah.
You won't be able to get out the door.
Don't worry about that. I mean, this was like, a going away party, and you haven't left yet.
And you're not leaving.
I'm not. Don't plan on that.
You can try, but you ain't going nowhere, sunshine.
Yeah, whoever we fire, every time the city manager comes in, you're gonna look at him and point at him and go, they love me.
and so
you just got ticked off of me, don't you? Shut up, Bill.
No.
Bill, enough. We want to go home.
Yes. Angry dog, Bill.
I trust me, I pet issues in my
All right, so what's the next step? Another vote?
Well,
You're not done. I apologize.
No, you're fine. And like I said, so tough choice. I'm good with either way. That's kind of where I lean, just because of, like I said, I took it out of just myself, and I asked staff and that, and the residents, and that's where he kind of percolated up. So whatever we choose, I think we're good here. The one thing I want to ask you all, obviously the other two up here don't have a vote. Would you like to hear their opinion? Obviously Sal's going to be on staff, and then our attorney's going to be on staff as well.
I
Your
can't
attorney's not going to
imagine.
comment, but thank you for the offer.
Okay.
I was going to say, I can't imagine our city.
I have opinions, but I'm not allowed to give them.
And Sal has to work for whoever the heck we.
Yeah,
vote.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, okay. That's valid.
Motion to
Thank you
approve
very
Matthew
much.
Koppler as the next city manager. Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I see no need for a ballot at this point.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll open up public comment. Mr. Mueller?
Oh, good God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry the mic was on.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. Again, you guys have a tough choice. I think Mr. Koppler might work well with staff, maybe a little better than Don King. Don King brings a lot to the table. I think he brings some discipline that I think this city needs. I would like to see his family in the community. I really appreciated that. He echoed that to me as well. He's got an outstanding military career, and I think he's looking to, like somebody said, plant his flag here. And have a place that he can call home and community. I didn't explore that aspect with Mr. Koppler, but either one of these individuals would do an excellent job. At the end of the day, we got Sal.
We're never getting Sal through the door.
I know, I'm telling you.
Devin Aaron, 5414 Bay Boulevard. I think this was a really great meeting, and this is like a delightful, night tonight. We're making progress, and it just shows you, Sal, how important you really are. Because we might, it's like, oh, hey, I'm just joking. It's like, yeah, you're joking, but there's some truth behind it. You are very important to the city.
Thank you.
And we thank you, seriously. I think they're both really good. I think we'll get more with King because of the fact that he is going to move here. And it's a little bit of a wild card, but I'm not one to be risk averse all the time. So that's just my opinion. But I think that, but I think they're both really good candidates, and I think you guys, know what you're doing. And again, to the agency, thank you. You did a great job. My only thing with these people who move around with the city manager thing is they do move to town, and they always can get a job somewhere else because other places are always looking for these things. And the thing that I really like about Don is he really wants to settle here, which means he'll really put forth the effort. I think so, and you don't just get funny medals and stuff from, Polish presidents for no reason. I don't know how that translates to our little town.
I didn't mean to imply they were funny medals, Devin.
But it's highly impressive. You don't.
No,
Absolutely.
There's nobody up here that doesn't admire the heck out of that.
Absolutely.
You don't get to that level of.
World Theater,
He
because
was on
the World Theater.
We had a checklist too, and he was on every one of our lists. So it's not like we were not looking at everything you're saying.
And I think we did a really good job tonight, and I'm super happy with either candidate. And thank you for all your time that you guys put into this, because it's super. I mean, I actually think Port Richey's been riddled with issues, these last years. I actually think we're finally getting to, we have a nice mayor, we got a good city council, we're going to get a good city manager in here. I really think we're on the right track.
Good.
Super stoked. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Devin.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else like to speak? Joe, welcome.
Joe Malin, 5446 Blue Point Drive. Both of those candidates are really good. Mr. Koppler is right to the point, and he addressed, a lot of the issues that we have in the city. But I do lean toward Colonel King, and because of three things. He did say he wanted to move into the city limits of Port Richey. Okay, when you've got skin in the game, when you're part of the community, that makes you more valuable to me, because I know I can go up and talk to him, and he's got the same issues I've got if anything should go wrong. So, that's, and the other thing I wanted, if you didn't pick up on this, I did, I'm sure you guys all picked up on it. He says, and even though I may get kicked out of here at some point, then I'll just run for city council. So that shows me he's going to stay in the game. He's going to stay in this community. And so that's why I lean toward the colonel. Okay. Thank you.
Joe. Anyone else like to speak? So before.
So I have a question, since we have the motion and so forth. What do we do just in case? I mean, since we're voting on this, and again, trying to keep this process moving, Colin, that you could jump in, that if it doesn't work out for whatever reason with Mr. Koppler, that we could immediately do something to move forward with Mr.
I
King.
amend my motion to include Mr. King as the alternate should we not come to negotiations.
Absolutely.
With Mr. Koppler.
Second.
I think you retract the first motion, or you amended it, so yes, we're good.
It's an amended motion.
Yeah. Oh, so motion second. Before we vote, I'll just make comment, because a couple people pointed out about Mr. King, and again, I did specify, he's.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
When you amend a motion, you have to vote out the amendment before you go back to the original motion. Isn't that correct?
The original motion is dead. You've amended it, so the original one's done, because
Yeah, but you have to vote out the amendment.
Vote, do the vote, yes. Yes. Oh, vote on letting him amend it?
Yeah, you have to vote out the amendment. In other words, you can make an original amendment, says we're gonna buy a fire truck, somebody says I want to amend it to make it a red fire truck. You have to handle that red issue before you go back to the original.
They can retract the motion without a vote, right?
Oh, no, the amendment's fine, I'm just saying, we just.
I've never done that, but I have no problem doing that, yeah, that's fine. So it's just asking if everyone's okay with this amendment.
We have amended motion and second, we just take.
Okay, so this is not the vote, but this is the vote to amend the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Bill.
Never
Appreciate
seen
that.
that done, but doesn't mean it's not the way to do it. Thank you.
All right, so now back to the amended motion and second on the table. Again, before I put it to vote, I just wanted to point out why I did mention Don King's willingness to be in the community. I didn't mean that I don't think Koppler's not wanting to be a part of the community.
Yeah, he had indicated he wants to be here a long time. He wants to be part of the community. So that doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't want to live here either.
Right.
So he may wind up,
I just wanted to let the public know that yes, we've all spoken to both those candidates, and they're both engaged to be engaged citizens here in Port Richey. So, okay. All that said, I put to vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That's close of our business.
that's right.
We got
to appoint
a committee or something like that.
Well,
Actually,
there's a couple issues I think left.
well, we have to appoint somebody to negotiate a contract.
Someone to negotiate a contract, and I believe the proposed salary was a range. So I don't know if you want to give whoever's going to negotiate the contract the ability to pick the number within that range. If not, we need to give that direction.
You had that, yes.
There you go. There's the answer.
Typically, what you do is you pick one member of the council to work with the attorney and with me to negotiate the contract. I mean, I tend to be a bystander, but obviously I've seen a few of these, and so I've got some ideas on how to bridge gaps and stuff like that. We don't want to discuss a salary range publicly at this point, because anybody watching the meeting will know that yes, we want to pay $25, but we'll go up to $35. And so immediately the candidate's going to say, well, I want 35. I know you're going to start at 25. So I think that's better left to not disclose at this point.
One thing I would really like to do is have produced for, obviously, I'm assuming we're going to go, well, we need to pick who's going to negotiate the contract. I assume it's going to be Sal and Nancy.
we can't. I wouldn't have Sal do it. Sal is then negotiating the contract for his boss.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Conflict of interest.
Good point.
Well, who would normally negotiate, Nancy or Colin?
That's tough.
Typically, you pick a member of the council to take the lead. Often the mayor. Doesn't need to be. If there's somebody who's got a lot of experience negotiating contracts or more experience than others, that's a good choice.
I would say if that's the case, I would recommend Mr. Byron.
Yeah.
Byron probably has more contract law experience than anybody.
Get him, Todd.
The other thing I would like to have produced for Todd, Terry, for Todd is the contract for Tom O'Neill, along with the last contract for John Duke.
Yes.
So he has the state of comparison. There's a lot of things. You have that?
I have that, and I have
Okay,
some new stuff.
you need to see that, because we purposely, because city managers are paid a pretty darn high salary. In Tom O'Neill's contract, we had pared back certain things like the number of paid day off, vacation days, but most importantly, we put limits on how many days that could be accrued. In other words, he had to use them or lose them. So we didn't wind up in a situation somewhere down the line, which we did with Ellen Posavac, which turned into a court battle, which we won because there was misfeasance involved. But she had stacked up an ungodly number of days in just 3 years, and it amounted to a ton of money.
The last city manager contract did have a cap, and it was capped off where he was over that cap and had to utilize time.
Okay.
So that is already, that's been corrected, but we have both contracts.
Okay, I'm glad to see. I mean, I think all the council should get that just for the heck of it, so we can take a look at them. But you know, I certainly think that would be valuable for Don. Okay.
Okay, have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
No.
No, I have a motion.
Okay, whenever you say that, it's a reflex.
So
I have a motion.
I motion to have Nancy and Todd
withdraw.
negotiate the contract
Okay.
with the city manager. Is that the
Well,
motion?
no, I've got a motion on the table from,
I think he.
you made a motion from Larry.
Oh, that was a
I
motion.
withdraw. I withdraw.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
that was a mistake on my part.
Let's do Nancy, Colin, and also include Colin on this
Okay.
as well. 'Cause he's
So,
our
okay,
employee.
Nancy, what's your name? Todd and Colin,
What's my name?
What's your name? Guy with T. Guy who named.
to negotiate the contract with the city manager.
Second. Any further discussion? Oh, I speak.
Oh my God,
Mr.
please,
Mueller?
I need to go home.
1 minute, I have an angry peeking.
Order.
Clock. Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. One of the things that you want to consider in this contract is this car allowance thing. I think that needs to be jerked. We got a 2.7 square mile city. Any driving around in the city can be handled through reimbursed expenses, through an expense report. It doesn't make sense to just throw money on top of that for car allowance. We need to be judicious in the amount that we spent. We just bought another vehicle for a code enforcement officer, parked a vehicle out here. Okay? So potentially that vehicle could be used by the city manager to drive around. Don't need a car allowance in the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
And I would have to say, I agree with you 100%. That's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. It's basically a tiny city, and it's just an extra $300 a month thrown in on top of everything else.
I as well would concur. Well,
Devin Aaron, 5414 Bay Boulevard. One thing that I forgot to mention that Dave actually brought up is Don does draw a pretty large pension. So we might be able to actually negotiate something with him based off performance where we could maybe save some money. And if he doesn't perform, we could obviously find somebody else. But that's something to think about, just something to chew on. Thank you.
anyone else like to speak? Seeing no hands put to vote, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
I just add one thing before we.
Absolutely.
Council, I just want to thank everybody involved in the past couple of days. Colin Bassinger, Steve Sorrell, your company, everyone that works with you. Thank you very much. Your services once again were very important. Staff, my wife, we put a lot of work in the past couple of days to make all this happen. I'm very happy that this went through. I want to put on the record that many people asked me why I didn't want this job. One of the main reasons is because of this process that happened the past couple of days. We haven't had a process like this ever happen. Even the last time, it was just between the interim city manager and one candidate. This process is the way it should happen. I really hope that council remembers this process, that we move forward. Many years later, this is what we're going to do. The fact that we had these interviews, this interaction, even from the meet and greet up until this moment right now, it was, everything was a learning experience, and I think you made a really well-rounded decision off that experience. So I want to thank the council for doing that, because it was very important that you did it this way.
I would like to thank you for immediately removing yourself from consideration for the final job, because that was a mistake that was made last time around, and that's why we wound up where we wound up. We wound up with two candidates, the interim and one other guy, and it was decided to not go with the interim because, well, a lot of us had issues with the interim. So, yeah, this process worked a lot better, and that was by virtue of you working your butt off and doing a good job. But not, the reason we had 4 good people here today is because there wasn't number 5 use.
And we didn't drag our feet.
No, you didn't drag your feet. Everyone reacted as efficiently as possible. We moved along and got it done. And like I said, I'd like to thank the 5 of you for doing that, and staff for all the work that they did in the past couple of days, especially the candidates. I mean, having a selection like that for our small city is unbelievable. I mean, worldwide experience, 30 decades, 30 years plus experience. I mean, we had the great benefit of a great selection. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody.
And I want to add that, as we sit up here, we make a lot of important decisions. And this is one of the most important decisions we can make for the city, is getting the right city manager in here. And what I really want to thank each and every one of the council members up here is because as it came out, we were pretty much unanimous. Well, we were unanimous on the final vote, but pretty much unanimous across the board. And it's nice to have decisions of this magnitude where we all come together and make a solid decision without a lot of
Considering the quality of the pool.
Yeah,
The
quality pool did help, obviously,
It's
but
amazing it shook out the way it did to me. Absolutely. With the quality candidates we had. And I look for the city to send out letters of thank you. Maybe have a letter written that we can all sign, thank them for their time and. For all
The other
candidates,
candidates,
absolutely,
all four
absolutely.
candidates.
With all four candidates, and we can all sign. I do appreciate each and every one of their time and effort coming down here, doing presentations, and considering us. Again, we all feel, like I said, we almost wish you could hire them all, but
yeah. But again, personally thank each one of you, and it's a pleasure serving each and every one of you. So, but I'd say I look for a motion.
Motion to adjourn. You notice I didn't move my lips. I was out of it.
I have a double motion.
Second.
A motion, a second. You got that, Ashley?
Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Just big names. There you go.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Being adjourned.